Meet Jos Leijdekkers, a young Dutchman whose notoriety has landed him on Europe's most wanted list. Also known as Bolle Jos or El Presidente, Leijdekkers has quickly ascended the ranks of international drug smuggling and money laundering. Accused of playing a pivotal role in these illicit operations, he has gained a reputation for his ruthless nature, often resorting to violence without hesitation. Law enforcement suspects Leijdekkers of orchestrating the disappearance of Naima Gilla, once regarded as the Dutch godmother of cocaine. Gilla was abducted and remains missing, with Leijdekkers being a prime suspect in her case. Additionally, it was revealed in January 2023 that the former Dutch Minister of Justice and Safety was placed under extensive protection due to a serious threat directly linked to Leijdekkers. In this video, we explore the astonishing and alarming rise of Jos Leijdekkers, the emerging leader of the Dutch cocaine empire. Let's delve into it. Jos Leijdekkers, commonly referred to as Bolle Jos for his hefty build, has adopted the alias El Presidente. Despite keeping a low profile as the search for him intensifies, more information about him is surfacing, sparking public intrigue due to the limited details available. Born in Breda, Netherlands on July 1, 1991, Bolle Jos is now 31 years old. His early life and entry into the world of drug smuggling remain shrouded in mystery. Speculation suggests that his father may have had ties to the ports of Antwerp and Rotterdam, but these assertions lack confirmation. Over the past half-decade, his name has gained prominence in criminal circles, where he has earned a formidable reputation. Within these spheres, a clear message resonates. Crossing paths with Bolle Jos is ill-advised. Bolle Jos finds himself entangled in one of the nation's most baffling disappearances. Allegedly, he orchestrated the abduction of Naima Gilla, often hailed as the Dutch godmother of cocaine. In October 2019, Gilla vanished after entering a car near her opulent residence in Amsterdam. It's believed that Bolle Jos summoned her regarding a compromised shipment of cocaine at the port of Antwerp, an investment of his that he suspected had been sabotaged. Gilla, perhaps naively, thought she could negotiate her way out of the situation, but tragically she couldn't. Following that ominous day in October 2019, she vanished without a trace. Some of her personal effects, including clothing and a handbag, were later discovered at the same dock where the drug bust occurred. The revelation that photographs of Gilla's deceased body were found on Ridwan Taghi's mobile phone shocked investigators, indicating that these gruesome images had circulated within the criminal underworld. Taghi, a former leader of the Mokro Mafia, is currently behind bars. However, Bolle Jos's alleged influence doesn't end there. The former Dutch Minister of Justice and Safety is now under constant protection due to grave threats originating from the criminal underworld, specifically attributed to Bolle Jos. In an intriguing turn of events, Bolle Jos and his associate Flora Bressers have been implicated in Belgium as the masterminds behind a thwarted plot to abduct the Belgian Minister of Justice and Safety in September 2022. This scheme resulted in the apprehension of 4 Dutch suspects, prompting the Belgian minister to be placed under constant protection. The motives driving these threats against ministers of justice and safety are deeply unsettling. In response to these allegations, Bolle Jos's legal team has vehemently dismissed them as utterly implausible and purely fictional. Meanwhile, Flora Bressers, a native of Belgium, adds another layer of intrigue to the narrative. Known as the finger cutter for his brutal method of punishment, Bressers is slightly older than Jos Leijdekkers, but matches him in ambition, intellect, and penchant for violence. Bressers himself has trafficked significant quantities of cocaine and held a prominent position in the drug trade for an extensive period. A curious detail about Bressers is his academic background. He studied criminology, only to veer off into a life of major criminal activity himself. In contrast to Bolle Jos, Bressers recently faced apprehension in Switzerland. Additionally, Bolle Jos's connections extend to the mother of Stefan Bogaerts, a 55-year-old Belgian. Bogaerts, who owned a container company, found himself grappling with severe financial woes. It's suspected that he turned to drug trafficking as a solution, but tragically, events took a fatal turn, ultimately costing him his life. Despite intensified efforts by law enforcement to track him down, Bolle Jos remains at large. Recently, authorities have released 2 blurry photographs of him and offered a €75,000 reward for any information leading to his capture. While €75,000 might seem modest for a criminal of his caliber, it's likely to increase the pressure on him. Speculation abounds regarding the country where he might be hiding. with only Dubai confirmed as a known location. Historically, Dubai has served as a sanctuary for international criminals seeking refuge amidst its luxurious surroundings and lenient legal environment. However, recent developments indicate a shift, as Dubai has begun cooperating with other nations to apprehend and extradite criminals within its borders. In recent times, Dubai has emerged as a pivotal hub for capturing notorious criminals, including figures like Ridwan Taghi, Rafael Imperial, Eden G, and over 400 other significant offenders from around the globe. Speculation swirls around the possibility that Bola Jos may have sought refuge in Dubai. However, Dutch authorities currently lean towards the belief that he's hiding in Turkey. Turkey has increasingly emerged as a focal point for some of the world's most wanted criminals. Nevertheless, other countries have also been floated as potential hideouts for Jos. This begs the question, if you were Bola Jos, where would you choose to lay low? Share your thoughts and ideas in the comments below. As direct efforts to locate Bola Jos face hurdles, law enforcement is redirecting their focus towards his close associates in hopes of unearthing more clues about his whereabouts. In January 2023, Dutch authorities conducted multiple raids on properties belonging to Bola Jos's family members. These operations resulted in the confiscation of various luxury items, including high-end watches, designer handbags, substantial sums of cash in different currencies, and counterfeit passports. Additionally, authorities seized numerous electronic devices, such as phones, USB sticks, computers, and cameras, along with photographs and significant amounts of cash from the offices. During these operations, Bola Jos's mother and sister were arrested. They are suspected of participating in money laundering activities, allegedly accepting large sums of cash and extravagant gifts that they likely knew were financed by illicit drug profits. Their frequent travels to Turkey over the past year have led investigators to speculate that Bola Jos may currently be residing there, possibly using their visits as a means to establish contact. Years have passed since the disappearance of Naima Gilla, whom he is suspected of kidnapping, yet she remains missing, with each passing day diminishing the hope of her discovery. Despite a €75,000 reward placed on his head, one must question whether this sum is sufficient to incentivize individuals to betray one of the most formidable drug kingpins in existence. As time elapses, the enigma surrounding Bola Jos deepens. While the bounty is substantial, it may not be compelling enough to persuade those close to him to come forward, given the risks associated with betraying a figure of his stature and influence within the criminal underworld. This raises a crucial question. What would it truly entail to dismantle the network of a deeply entrenched and feared criminal like Bola Jos? Bola Jos remains a shadowy figure, with the limited information available about him only enhancing his almost legendary status among law enforcement and fellow criminals alike. The hurdles facing authorities are substantial, as they grapple with not only the dearth of tangible evidence and leads, but also the fear gripping potential informants. Ongoing investigations and heightened scrutiny on his family may eventually yield breakthroughs. However, with each passing day devoid of fresh evidence or leads, the prospect of bringing Bola Jos to justice grows increasingly remote. The global reach of his operations and the sophistication of his tactics suggest that apprehending him will necessitate more than just local efforts. It will demand international collaboration and a significant bolstering of resources and intelligence sharing among nations. As we delve deeper into this captivating narrative of crime and evasion, the international community remains on edge, holding out hope that justice will ultimately prevail. The ongoing saga of Bola Jos continues to mesmerize the world, serving as a stark reminder of the intricate and clandestine realm of global drug trafficking.
London, the city of iconic double-decker buses, afternoon tea, and the majestic Big Ben, is renowned for its rich history, diverse culture, and vibrant streets. From the quaint, cobbled streets of the old town to the bustling energy of its markets, London is a city like no other. However, beneath the surface of this charming metropolis, a shocking phenomenon has been quietly unfolding. The once quaint and peaceful streets of London are now under threat from an unexpected source, the Albanian Mafia. Behind the picturesque facades and the postcard-perfect images of London's landmarks, the Albanian Mafia has managed to infiltrate the very fabric of London's society. Forget about classic detectives like Sherlock Holmes and Inspector Morse. It's time to meet the real street-level criminals, armed not with magnifying glasses, but with iPhones and slicked-back hairdos. These criminals are reshaping the landscape of the British underworld, and their rise is nothing short of surprising. It's worth noting that the Albanian Mafia isn't your typical old-school mob. Gone are the days of smoke-filled rooms and back-alley dealings. These modern-day criminals hail from a small Balkan country known for its folk music, breathtaking landscapes, and centuries-old traditions. Who could have imagined that behind the serene melodies of the region would lie a deeply organized and brutal network of crime? The Albanian Mafia has been gaining ground across Europe for years, gradually expanding its criminal enterprises, particularly in the drug trade. Initially involved in prostitution and smuggling, these criminal organizations have adapted, becoming increasingly sophisticated. The move into drug trafficking has propelled them further up the criminal food chain, particularly as they enter Europe's largest markets. But how did this rise happen so quickly, and what factors have allowed the Albanian Mafia to dominate? The reasons are multifaceted and are tied to their ruthless efficiency, their ability to adapt, and their ever-growing network of operations. The video we are covering dives deep into several aspects of this expansion, highlighting the brutality and sheer audacity of these operations. The term Albanian Mafia refers to various criminal groups based in Albania, but operating worldwide. These groups are known for being deeply involved in illegal activities such as drug trafficking, weapons smuggling, and human trafficking. Over the years, they have become significant players in Europe's illicit drug trade, particularly in the cocaine market. They are believed to be responsible for supplying much of the cocaine that circulates in major European cities, including London. The streets of London, which were once some of the safest in the world, are now seeing a surge in crime, with the Albanian Mafia at the center of this alarming trend. One woman from Barking, East London, described the fear and intimidation she faces while living on an estate dominated by notorious Albanian gangsters. This particular gang, known as the Albanians, has been terrorizing locals for years, flaunting their criminal exploits on social media. This gang, which has roots in both Albania and Kosovo, is involved in a wide range of criminal activities, including drug trafficking, money laundering, and violent crime. The Albanians gained notoriety in the UK around 2016 after their involvement in a series of high-profile crimes. Known for their flashy lifestyle, they often post pictures of their luxurious cars, designer clothing, and piles of cash on social media. This not only fuels their fame, but also attracts new recruits eager to join their ranks. The gang's primary focus is drug smuggling, particularly in the cocaine trade, but they are also known for their ruthless tactics, using violence and intimidation to maintain control over their operations. Daisy O'Doherty, a resident of the estate, described her experience of living in fear. In an interview, she recalled how gangsters frequently hang out in common areas, making their presence felt by everyone nearby. "It's always worrying here," she said. "There's so much intimidation, especially as a white woman living alone in a council flat. I'm definitely a target." One particularly shocking incident involved a police raid in which officers arrested several individuals tied to a gun-to-gun scheme. The tension and danger of life on the estate are palpable, with reports of gangs targeting people with spare rooms to stash their drugs. In a chilling revelation, the National Crime Agency, NCA, confirmed that Albanian gangs are responsible for smuggling hundreds of millions of pounds out of the UK each year, primarily using clandestine routes like channel crossings. According to senior NCA officials, many of those arrested for cultivating cannabis in the UK had arrived only days earlier via small boats. Albanian gangs, known for their clever and dangerous methods, operate quickly and efficiently, ensuring that their illicit activities remain under the radar. One of the most notable criminal gangs operating in the UK is the Leijdekkers, which has a firm grip on the British cocaine market. They are known to act as street dealers and enforcers for the Albanian Mafia. The NCA reports that the shiptares are steadily working toward dominating the UK's £5 billion cocaine market. The Albanian Mafia's rapid success can be traced back to their clever business model and their ability to learn from more established criminal organisations. The Albanian Mafia's rise in the UK is a remarkable tale of criminal evolution. Their business model is simple but extremely effective. Unlike traditional drug dealers who operate in separate stages, importers, wholesalers, and street-level dealers, the Albanians have rejected this model. They go straight to the source, negotiating directly with Colombian cartels to secure massive cocaine shipments. This direct connection to South America has allowed them to streamline their operations and dominate the market with unrivaled efficiency. Thanks to this business model, the Albanian Mafia has been able to offer some of the cheapest and highest quality cocaine in Britain, making it a drug of choice for many. The rise in cocaine consumption has led to a record number of overdose deaths in the UK, with the country having the highest number of young users in Europe. In 2016 alone, the production of cocaine in South America rose by 31%, leading to a surge in large-scale drug seizures across Europe, many of which were tied to Albanian criminal networks. However, the presence of the Albanian Mafia has had consequences far beyond the drug trade. Their influence has contributed to the rise in violence across London, with gang wars over territory and the lucrative cocaine trade leading to a spike in knife crimes. Smaller, younger street gangs are now able to access cocaine thanks to the lower prices offered by Albanian suppliers, and this has escalated street violence significantly. One recent case in the borough of Waltham Forest saw gangs transitioning from territorial disputes to outright drug-dealing businesses, with young teens, like 14-year-old Jaden Moody, becoming caught up in the violence. Even though Jaden's family claimed he had no gang affiliation, he was still murdered in a targeted attack, a grim reminder of how widespread and dangerous these criminal organizations have become. The roots of the Albanian Mafia's rise in Britain can be traced back to the Kosovo War of the late 1990s, which saw over 1 million people displaced. Many of those refugees eventually found their way to the UK, often claiming to be from Kosovo to receive preferential asylum treatment. Over time, these individuals, many of whom struggled with social exclusion and economic hardship, were recruited into criminal gangs, helping to build the network of Albanian criminals we see today. Albanian Mafia bosses have spent decades building their empires, patiently accumulating wealth through their involvement in drug trafficking, prostitution, and human trafficking. Their approach to business is methodical and focused on long-term profits, unlike typical British drug dealers who aim to make quick money at any cost. This patient strategy has allowed them to grow without drawing attention, staying beneath the radar while steadily consolidating power. Their success in drug trafficking is matched by their ingenuity in money laundering. The Albanian Mafia uses various methods to launder the massive profits from their drug operations, including using ports in Rotterdam, Antwerp, and Algeciras to move drugs undetected. They have perfected methods to smuggle drugs into Europe, hiding them in everyday products such as bananas, pineapples, and dried fruits. Once the drugs reach Europe, they are distributed through well-established channels, often to be sold in countries like the UK. In conclusion, London's streets, once a symbol of British charm and order, have been disrupted by the audacious rise of the Albanian Mafia. This modern-day criminal empire, hidden behind the city's bright lights, has managed to infiltrate neighborhoods and terrorize communities. However, even as the Albanian Mafia continues to assert its control, London's spirit remains unyielding. Just as the city survived the Great Fire of London and the Blitz, it will weather this storm as well. The rise of the Albanian Mafia in London serves as a stark reminder that crime knows no boundaries. but it also serves as an opportunity for communities to unite against such threats, strengthening bonds and embracing the diversity that makes London one of the world's most vibrant cities. As the city faces this challenge, it is important to remember that the shadows cast by these criminal groups can be dispelled by the light of creativity, unity, and resilience. Together, London can reclaim its streets and continue to shape its future, free from the influence of organized crime.
In July 1979, a faction linked with the Hells Angels met covertly under the shroud of night, having meticulously tracked their target Mick Jagger for over a week. Recognizing the formidable security at Andy Warhol's residence, they opted for a more patient strategy, setting their sights on Jagger's own home. Their cunning plan involved sailing across the Long Island Sound to approach Jagger's estate from its less guarded rear, intending to plant explosives beneath his residence unnoticed before disappearing into the darkness. But what drove the Hells Angels to such extreme measures against one of music's most revered figures? Let's delve into it. Scheduled for December 6, 1969, a significant free concert was set to take place at Altamont Speedway, about an hour from San Francisco, aiming to embody the peace and love ethos of the 1960s counterculture. However, plagued by organizational shortcomings, the event turned tragic, resulting in 4 fatalities and earning its place as one of music history's most contentious moments. In November 1969, amid their first American tour in nearly 5 years, the Rolling Stones faced media backlash, notably from esteemed critic Ralph Glean of the San Francisco Chronicle, who criticized the band's ticket prices as evidence of a troubling disregard for their audience's financial well-being. In response to criticisms, the Rolling Stones defied detractors by concluding their tour with a massive free concert in California, featuring not only the Stones, but also Jefferson Airplane, Santana, and the Grateful Dead. Inspired by the success of Woodstock just 4 months prior, organizers aimed to replicate its impact on the West Coast, envisioning a cultural phenomenon akin to a West Coast counterpart. Despite free admission, the Stones had a financial stake in the event's success as part of their documentary film project titled Gimme Shelter, entitling them to 50% of the profits, and thus incentivizing a substantial audience for filming. Poor planning plagued the December 6th event, initially intended for San Jose State University, but rejected due to prior unruly crowds, leading city officials to refuse further large-scale gatherings. Denied permits, organizers shifted to Golden Gate Park, only to face rejection from the city's mayor, known for his disdain toward counterculture movements. With the deadline looming, a stroke of luck secured Sears Point Raceway as the venue, prompting immediate efforts to prepare for an event expected to draw hundreds of thousands. Recognizing the organizers' vulnerability, Sears Point owners imposed strict conditions, including a hefty $100,000 deposit and exclusive rights to the Stones documentary. Rejecting demands, the Stones necessitated another venue change, shifting the concert to Altamont Speedway on the evening of Thursday, December 4th, just 2 days before the event. This sudden relocation left organizers scrambling, with insufficient time to arrange vital amenities like restrooms, medical services, parking, and notably, security. The decision to enlist the Hells Angels for event security remains controversial, with the instigator's identity still debated, although prevailing narratives suggest recommendations from Jefferson Airplane and the Grateful Dead, both of whom had previously engaged the Angels for security at their concerts without incident. Following, representatives from the Stones and the Grateful Dead management teams met with the San Francisco chapter of the Hells Angels to arrange security for the concert. Conflicting accounts exist regarding the sequence of events and individuals involved, yet it's undisputed that the Angels were contracted to provide security in exchange for $500 worth of beer, equivalent to over $4,000 in 2024. Initially expecting 100,000 attendees, the Altamont Speedway found itself overwhelmed by over 300,000 fans on the day of the concert. With preparations rushed, the massive crowd faced shortages of essential provisions like food and water, though many brought their own drugs and alcohol, fostering an atmosphere of indulgence and communal sharing. However, the initial atmosphere of revelry quickly soured as both concertgoers and security guards indulged excessively. The contracted Hells Angels, having consumed their allotted $500 worth of beer, became intoxicated, with many notably so by the time the performances began. Santana kicked off the event with a spirited set, initially well received. But as the day progressed and intoxication levels rose, the atmosphere turned volatile. Inebriated concertgoers attempted to breach the stage, prompting the Angels to respond forcefully, using pool cues and bike chains to repel the crowd. The situation escalated into chaos, marked by numerous altercations between audience members and the Hells Angels. During a performance by Jefferson Airplane, co-founder and lead singer Marty Balin attempted to restore order but was violently assaulted by an angel, rendering him unconscious. Further violence erupted when Stephen Stills of Crosby, Stills, Nash & Young was targeted during his group's performance, enduring repeated stabbings with a sharpened bike spoke. The escalating mayhem led the Grateful Dead, scheduled to perform next, to wisely depart immediately out of concern for their safety. With the Grateful Dead's abrupt exit, a significant 2-hour gap in the concert schedule ensued, exacerbating tensions among the increasingly aggressive crowd. Restless and unchecked, the Angels began hurling full cans of beer at unsuspecting audience members, causing several to sustain concussions and prompting others to flee. By the time the Rolling Stones made their entrance, the concert had descended into chaos. In a shocking turn of events, Mick Jagger was immediately assaulted, receiving a punch to the face from a member of the audience upon disembarking from their helicopter. Nevertheless, undeterred, the band pressed on towards the stage. Initially, the Stones' presence seemed to pacify the restless crowd, but disturbances resurfaced during the performance of Sympathy for the Devil. Jagger intervened, urging calmness and achieving a temporary ceasefire, allowing the band to finish the song uninterrupted. Tragedy struck during Under My Thumb when 18-year-old Meredith Hunter was fatally stabbed by Hell's Angel Alan Passaro, captured in real time by the documentary Gimme Shelter. Hunter, aware of racial tensions, had brought a firearm for protection, but retrieved it amidst escalating chaos, leading to the fatal outcome. Despite his girlfriend's desire to leave, Hunter persuaded her to stay, citing the impending performance by the Rolling Stones. Just 45 minutes before the fatal incident, Hunter, distinct in his lime green suit, was seen on record attempting to rush the stage with other audience members. Like many attendees, he was under the influence of drugs, confirmed later by his autopsy report. During the Stones' performance of Under My Thumb, Hunter climbed a speaker adjacent to the stage for a better view, prompting swift intervention from a group of Hells Angels who forcibly removed him and struck him. Despite this, Hunter got up and retreated into the crowd, pursued by the Angels. In a tragic turn, Hunter drew his pistol, extending both arms, just as Hells Angel Alan Passaro made 2 stabbing motions toward him. As Hunter collapsed, Passaro continued his assault, stabbing him 4 more times. Joined by other Angels, they surrounded Hunter, kicking his head until he lay motionless. Adding to the brutality, one Angel lifted a metal garbage can and dropped it onto Hunter's prone form. Passaro callously remarked to onlookers, "Don't touch him, he's going to die anyway." The violence at the concert claimed additional lives, with 2 individuals falling victim to a hit-and-run incident, and another drowning in an irrigation ditch while under the influence of LSD, bringing the total death toll of the one-day event to 4. Alan Passaro was arrested and charged with murder, but ultimately acquitted after the jury reviewed footage from the event. Passaro met his own demise in a drowning accident at Anderson Lake on March 29, 1985, with the circumstances deemed kind of suspicious by the head of the local sheriff's detective unit, though no foul play was definitively established. Following the violence, blame was squarely directed at the Hells Angels, leading the Rolling Stones to sever ties with the group indefinitely. This decision angered the Angels, who felt betrayed by Jagger and the Stones' failure to defend them in the media. Sonny Barger, president of the Oakland chapter of the Hells Angels and present at the event, called into a radio show a couple of weeks later to justify the group's actions, vehemently denying any intention of policing the event and accusing Jagger of scapegoating them. Barger expressed disdain for the perceived manipulation, labeling the Angels as the biggest suckers and recounting an agreement allowing him to enjoy beer at the edge of the stage without interference. The Angels, angered by the Rolling Stones' perceived lack of support, retaliated by putting a contract on Mick Jagger's life, resulting in multiple assassination attempts, beginning in 1975. In the first instance, an armed assassin waited in a New York City hotel lobby, but Jagger's absence foiled the plot. Subsequent efforts, including a plan involving explosives on a boat aimed at Jagger's home, were derailed by a sudden storm, causing the would-be assassins to lose both their weapons and their stability in the rough seas. Decades of secrecy surrounded a covert operation until 1983, when a former Hells Angel, known as Butch, testified before a Senate committee about plans to eliminate Mick Jagger due to the band's alleged manipulation of public opinion. Despite past failures, Butch expressed confidence in the contract's active nature, believing someone would eventually succeed. Mick Jagger, now 80, continues to thrive, with plans for a tour sponsored by the American Association of Retired Persons.
Amsterdam, renowned for its picturesque canals, vibrant tulip markets, and world-class museums, is also home to a darker, more insidious side. Beneath its seemingly idyllic exterior lies a world of crime, corruption, and deceit. The city, often celebrated as a haven of tolerance and progressive thinking, harbors a thriving underworld of organized crime, where fortunes are built on illicit activities such as drug trafficking, extortion, and brutal violence. The shadowy figures who occupy this space operate by their own set of rules, where betrayal is swift and retribution is often fatal. Martin Kok, one of Amsterdam's most notorious figures, embodied the contradictions of the city itself. A man whose life was shaped by crime, violence, and the desire for power, Kok's story is a tragic example of the ways in which ambition and defiance can spiral out of control. Once a feared criminal in the drug trade, Kok reinvented himself as a journalist who would expose the very underworld he had once ruled. But his attempt at redemption would prove futile, and his brutal assassination on December 8, 2016, would mark the tragic end of a life that had been driven by a relentless pursuit of both power and exposure. Kok's assassination, executed with clinical precision, was the culmination of decades spent at the mercy of Amsterdam's criminal underworld. It was an end that mirrored the complexity of his life, an intricate web of loyalty, betrayal, and revenge that had finally unraveled, leaving behind a legacy marked by both admiration and contempt. Martin Kok was born on June 25, 1967, in Volendam, a picturesque fishing village nestled along the IJsselmeer in the Netherlands. Famous for its traditional wooden houses, costumed residents, and the serene beauty of the countryside, Volendam painted a picture of tranquility that belied the restlessness brewing within young Martin. The Kok family, modest in means, ran a fish delivery business, selling eel and herring, a business that kept them tied to the rhythms of daily blue-collar life. From an early age, Kok found himself at odds with the confines of his rural upbringing. His childhood was marked by the monotony of small-town life, filled with long days of helping his father with deliveries. While others in the village contentedly followed the well-worn path of tradition, Kok's mind raced with dreams of a different future, one filled with excitement and the possibility of greatness. Kok's academic performance reflected his dissatisfaction with his environment. School bored him, and his rebellious streak often led to trouble. He was a restless teenager who resented the small town's social confines and longed for something more. By his early teens, he had developed a penchant for fighting, skipping school, and testing his limits. It was in these formative years that Kok's world expanded beyond the familiar sights of Volendam. During his trips to Amsterdam, Kok discovered a city pulsating with life, energy, and danger. Amsterdam's vibrant nightlife, thriving social scene, and gritty allure offered a stark contrast to the sleepy streets of his hometown. It was in these streets that Kok felt he could escape the constraints of Volendam, where the rules of society seemed to hold little sway. Amsterdam promised excitement, wealth, and power, the very things Kok craved. At the age of 18, Kok left Volendam and moved to Amsterdam. His goal was clear: to build a new life for himself, one that would place him in the heart of the city's underground economy. He started out with humble jobs, including working as a nightclub coat check attendant. Though menial, these jobs gave him an inside view into the world of Amsterdam's nightlife, a world teeming with wealth, excess, and vice. It wasn't long before Kok became involved in the city's criminal underworld. At first, he sold ecstasy pills, a popular drug in Amsterdam's club scene. His natural charisma and street smarts helped him quickly build a reputation as a reliable, efficient dealer. Koch wasn't content with selling small quantities. He aspired to bigger things. His ambitions were insatiable, and he soon expanded his operations, moving into cocaine trafficking. The illicit business he built spanned not only Amsterdam, but also reached into other parts of Europe. But it was Koch's ruthless approach to business that truly set him apart from his peers. By the late 1980s, he had already earned a reputation for violence and aggression. A dispute with a former associate escalated into a shooting, a clear indication that Koch was willing to go to extreme lengths to assert his dominance. In 1989, during a drunken altercation, he killed rival dealer Peter Giesbergen. Koch was convicted of manslaughter in 1990 and sentenced to 5 years in prison. This marked a turning point in his life, as the prison sentence would both punish him and serve as an education in the ways of organized crime. Prison became both a punishment and a learning ground for Koch. Surrounded by seasoned criminals, Koch absorbed the lessons of the underworld. Among his fellow inmates was Willem Holleder, the infamous mastermind behind the kidnapping of beer magnate Freddie Heineken in 1983. Holleder, known for his cunning and ruthlessness, became a mentor to Koch, teaching him about the intricacies of organized crime, the ways in which power could be wielded, and how to navigate the treacherous world of criminal alliances. By the time Koch was released from prison, he had undergone a transformation. He was no longer just a small-time drug dealer, but a man with connections, experience, and ambition. Over the next 2 decades, Koch built an empire that spanned not only drug trafficking, but also extortion, money laundering, and other illicit activities. His reputation for violence and short temper made him a feared figure in the criminal world, but it also painted a target on his back. Rivals and law enforcement alike sought to bring him down, but Koch seemed to thrive in the chaos, evading capture and punishment time and time again. In 2011, after decades of living in the criminal underworld, Koch shocked everyone by stepping away from his empire. He reinvented himself as a crime journalist, launching a blog called Vlinderscrime. The blog focused on exposing the inner workings of the Dutch underworld, and Koch's transition from criminal to journalist was as unexpected as it was daring. This new chapter in his life allowed him to maintain his ties to the criminal world while also controlling the narrative around his activities. Koch's blog became a sensation. It offered a unique insider's perspective on organized crime in the Netherlands and beyond. His writing was sharp, filled with dark humor and brutal honesty, and it resonated with readers. He didn't shy away from publishing photos of criminals, exposing their secrets and mocking their failures. His ability to blend insider knowledge with a scathing critique of the world he had once ruled made his work both compelling and dangerous. But Koch's new role as a journalist also made him a target. His brazen disregard for the unspoken codes of loyalty and silence in the criminal world earned him many enemies. He was no longer a participant in the underworld's dark business, but an exposer of its secrets. This shift in role brought Koch to the attention of some of the most dangerous figures in Europe's criminal landscape. By 2016, Koch had become a celebrity within both the criminal world and the media. His blog had garnered significant attention, and he was sought after by various outlets for interviews and commentary on organized crime. One notable connection was his partnership with MPC, a company that specialized in providing encrypted phones to criminals. The company was run by the Scottish Gillespie brothers, James and Barry, who had connections to some of Europe's most notorious criminals. Koch's association with MPC, a company that catered to the underworld, did not sit well with all of his former associates. Most notably, Ridouan Taghi, the powerful Moroccan-Dutch drug lord who controlled large swaths of Europe's cocaine trade, saw Koch's blog as a direct threat to his empire. Taghi's cartel, known for its ruthlessness and clandestine operations, could not tolerate the exposure of its dealings. Intercepted communications between Taghi's associates revealed that Koch had become a marked man. The cartel had placed a bounty on his head, and Koch's continued defiance would ultimately lead to his assassination. On the evening of December 8, 2016, Martin Koch's life came to a violent end. That day, Koch had been engaged in his usual routine, attending meetings and preparing content for his blog. Later in the day, he met with Christopher Hughes, a close associate of the Gillespie brothers, at the Citizen M Hotel near Schiphol Airport. Unbeknownst to Koch, a hitman was lying in wait, prepared to carry out the job that had been ordered by Taghi's cartel. Surveillance footage later revealed that the assassin's gun malfunctioned, giving Koch a chance to escape. Undeterred, Koch continued his evening plans, heading to Boccaccio, a sex club on the outskirts of Amsterdam. It was there, at 11:31 p.m., that the hitman struck. As Koch approached his car, he was ambushed and shot multiple times. The gunfire shattered the stillness of the night. Koch's death sent shockwaves through Amsterdam, a city that had long been accustomed to its criminal underworld, but never quite this bold in its brutality. Koch's brazen defiance and exposure of the criminal world had finally cost him his life. The murder of Martin Koch became one of the most high-profile investigations in Dutch history. Initially, the police had few leads to follow. The assassin had been careful, and Koch's connections to the criminal world made it difficult to pinpoint a clear motive. However, as the investigation unfolded, it became apparent that Koch's killing was not a random act of violence, but a carefully orchestrated hit ordered by Ridwan Taghi. Through meticulous investigation, law enforcement pieced together the details of the murder. The surveillance footage that captured Koch's final moments became a critical piece of evidence. Within weeks, the police identified the hitman as a former associate of Taghi's cartel, a man with a history of carrying out executions for the organization. But it would take years for Taghi to be captured, and Koch's death would ultimately serve as the catalyst for the unraveling of one of Europe's most dangerous criminal empires. The death of Martin Koch was a stark reminder of the high stakes involved in challenging the status quo of organized crime. Koch's life and work as a crime journalist exposed a system of corruption and violence that had remained hidden in plain sight for years. His willingness to take on powerful criminal syndicates, including Taghi's cartel, brought attention to the dangerous intersection of crime, media, and power. Koch's legacy is a complex one. To some, he was a hero, an individual who dared to expose the truth, regardless of the cost. To others, he was a traitor, a man who had broken the unwritten rules of the criminal world and paid the ultimate price for his hubris. But for the Dutch public, Koch's story was a reminder that crime doesn't always stay in the shadows. In the end, his defiance changed the landscape of crime reporting in the Netherlands forever, and his story remains one of the most tragic and dangerous examples of the high price paid for the pursuit of truth. On what appeared to be a quiet September morning in 2019, a sleepy German village was abruptly awakened by the largest police operation in the country's history. In a meticulously coordinated raid, 650 officers descended upon a former NATO nuclear bunker in the town of Traben-Trabach, the home of a notorious internet service provider with a dark, criminal side. Inside the bunker, the authorities uncovered an alarming scene: 200 computers and at least 2,000 servers, which were allegedly being used to host a wide array of illicit activities, from drug and weapons trafficking to the distribution of child pornography and cybercrime software. Amidst the chaos of the raid, more than 10 individuals were arrested, including the enigmatic owner of the bunker, Herman Johan Zen. However, one shadowy figure managed to slip through the authorities' grasp: George Mitchell, a criminal mastermind who had eluded capture for years. As investigators delved deeper into the case, a chilling revelation emerged about Mitchell's early life and his rise to prominence in the criminal world. Born and raised in the gritty Dublin suburb of Ballyfermot, George Mitchell, known in the criminal underworld as the Penguin, grew up in an environment marked by hardship, crime, and a lack of opportunity. While his cousin, Gay Mitchell, managed to escape and go on to have a successful career in politics as the Minister of State for European Affairs, George was drawn into the darker side of life. Just miles from Gay's first home in Inchicore, where the Grand Canal provided a brief respite from the harsh realities of nearby council estates, George was carving out a much darker future for himself. Mitchell's early life was steeped in adversity, and this hardship would eventually shape the notorious criminal he would become. Starting out as a truck driver for Jacob's Biscuits, Mitchell quickly found himself entangled in crime. In the 1980s, he took part in a series of robberies with associates of the slain gangland boss, Martin "the General" Cahill, whose criminal empire was built on his ironclad control and ruthless dealings. Cahill took notice of Mitchell's unwavering loyalty to the criminal world and his ability to remain tight-lipped when the Garda, Ireland's national police force, turned their attention on them. Mitchell's silence earned him Cahill's respect and led to further rewards within the criminal empire. By 1988, Mitchell had earned a 5-year prison sentence for stealing a large consignment of cattle, further strengthening his connections to the underworld. During his time behind bars, Mitchell became aware of the immense profits that could be made from the drug trade. Once released, he set his sights on seizing a portion of the rapidly growing cannabis and ecstasy markets. Within just a few years, Mitchell had risen to become Ireland's most powerful drug lord, operating out of West Dublin and quietly building a highly organized trafficking operation that spread across Europe. In the summer of 1995, Mitchell's criminal empire first caught the attention of law enforcement during Operation Barbie, an extensive surveillance operation aimed at uncovering his role in setting up large-scale ecstasy production. Investigators tracked his network of criminal associates and discovered the existence of ecstasy processing labs in Lucan and the Ward, County Dublin, marking a significant blow to Mitchell's operations. The raid of these labs, which were capable of producing vast quantities of ecstasy, revealed Mitchell's far-reaching influence in the illicit drug trade. This operation came on the heels of a significant setback for Mitchell, as just months earlier, the London Regional Crime Squad had seized £570,000 in cash intended as a down payment for a drug shipment. Despite mounting pressure from law enforcement and a growing criminal crackdown, Mitchell continued to live a lavish lifestyle. He resided in a luxurious house in Palmerstown, drove bulletproof cars, and amassed assets worth around €1 million. At the same time, organized crime gangs began to exploit the lucrative black market for stolen computer components, which were sold throughout Europe, Britain, and the Far East. Although Mitchell was still Ireland's most powerful drug lord, his increasing involvement in the computer trade added another layer to his growing criminal empire. By 1996, with the establishment of the Criminal Assets Bureau in the wake of the murder of investigative journalist Veronica Guerin, the pressure on Mitchell intensified. CAB, which targeted the wealth of Ireland's criminal elite, set its sights on Mitchell. As the years went on, Mitchell's operations faced several setbacks. His right-hand man, Johnny Doran, was caught with £500,000 worth of cannabis, while his enforcer, Michael Bowl, was arrested after a failed murder attempt in London. Mitchell was also questioned in relation to the 1995 murder of Dublin martial arts expert Frank Preston, although he was released without charge after 48 hours in custody. In an effort to evade increasing law enforcement attention, Mitchell fled to Amsterdam, where he continued to oversee his multi-million-pound drug empire. By this time, nearly all drugs entering Ireland were sourced from the Netherlands, making it a critical hub for his trafficking operations. However, Mitchell's life in Amsterdam would soon intersect with that of Herman Johan Zen, an eccentric Dutchman with a fascination for the emerging internet and a desire to build a bulletproof cyber business. In the late 1990s, Zen bought a decommissioned NATO nuclear bunker in southern Holland, transforming it into the Cyber Bunker, a web hosting company that catered to clients running illegal operations online. Zen's bunker gained a reputation for hosting illicit websites, mainly those with adult content. Despite his refusal to allow child pornography or terrorism-related material, Zen's services quickly gained popularity among those who wanted to operate without fear of interference from authorities. In 2002, a fire at the bunker revealed that alongside hosting illegal websites, Zen was also operating an MDMA ecstasy lab within the facility. Despite the setback, Zen expanded his operation, and by 2013, he purchased a former German military bunker in the town of Tierby and Tra. This acquisition set the stage for an even closer collaboration between Zen and Mitchell. Around the same time, Mitchell resurfaced on the criminal radar after being spotted in Treben-Trarbach, the village where Zen's cyber bunker was located. In this small, seemingly peaceful town, Mitchell began to meet Zen in local coffee shops, adopting the alias Mr. Green. During this period, Mitchell and Zen began working together on a new venture, an encrypted phone service designed to provide secure communication for criminals who wanted to avoid detection by law enforcement. At the time, encrypted phones were believed to be uncrackable, a belief that would soon be shattered with the 2020 EncroChat hack. In 2015 and 2016, the encrypted phone service Mitchell and Zen had set up became a crucial tool for organized crime, including the cocaine trade. This network, which promised privacy to users, allowed criminal enterprises to operate undetected, and Mitchell was reportedly involved with the network, contributing around £150,000 in investments. German authorities began to track the operation, eventually discovering that Zen's bunker was hosting multiple illicit activities, including drug trafficking and weapons dealing. At this point, the scale of Mitchell's involvement in the criminal network became clear, with links to organized crime syndicates across Europe and beyond, from the Netherlands to Colombia. The investigation culminated in a massive raid in 2019, when 650 German police officers stormed Zen's bunker. Although Zen and several of his associates were arrested, Mitchell managed to evade capture once again. It was revealed that Mitchell was the true mastermind behind much of the operation, with his connections extending far beyond Europe to include Colombian drug cartels, the Hells Angels, and the Bandidos biker gang. He was believed to be responsible for trafficking tons of cocaine into Europe, often using containers of oranges as cover for shipments from North Africa. Despite the mounting evidence against him, Mitchell continued to evade justice. In early 2023, another major operation dismantled an encrypted phone network known as Exclu Network. This network, which had ties to Mitchell and Zen, had been developed over several years and was designed to facilitate secure communication among criminals. The takedown of the network led to 45 arrests across multiple countries and the seizure of millions in cash, drugs, and firearms. In the aftermath of this bust, Mitchell's role in the network was exposed, further solidifying his position as one of Europe's most elusive and dangerous criminals. Mitchell's role in Exclu Network solidified his place as one of Europe's most wanted criminals. Authorities believe he was responsible for selling encrypted phones to high-level criminals across the globe, particularly in Colombia, where he had extensive connections to drug cartels. Today, Mitchell remains a shadowy figure, quietly moving across Europe and focusing on his family, as law enforcement continues to hunt him down. Despite the relentless efforts of authorities, Mitchell's ability to stay one step ahead of the law and his continued involvement in large-scale international criminal operations has ensured that he remains a high-priority target in global law enforcement efforts.
In Malmö, Sweden, renowned for its advancements in gaming and technology, there exists a lesser-known reality overshadowed by gang conflicts. At the center of this turmoil lies a bitter feud between two individuals, Amir Mekky and Daniel Petrovsky. Their ongoing rivalry has led to a significant number of casualties, contributing to the alarming increase in gang-related violence across Sweden. What underlying factors have fueled the escalation of this feud, and who are the unfortunate victims caught in its wake? Today we'll delve into the destructive conflict between Amir Mekky and Daniel Petrovsky, which continues to tear apart communities in Sweden. Let's delve into it. Mekky defies the stereotype of a typical gangster. He leads the Swedes gang and carries a notorious reputation. With a grim tally of 17 assassinations across Europe, law enforcement agencies have honed in on him as a prime target. Despite his Danish origins, Mekky's affiliations with Moroccan cartels run deep, facilitating the expansion of his drug empire. His strongest ally, Ridouan Taghi, a prominent figure in the Dutch-Moroccan underworld, has further bolstered Mekky's influence. By 2016, Mekky had firmly established dominance in Sweden's drug market, leveraging his powerful connections and employing ruthless tactics. Mekky's ascent to prominence stemmed from his leadership in a gang notorious for its ruthless methods. Apart from drug trafficking, his gang provided services as contract killers, carrying out shootings and bombings for those willing to pay top dollar. This ferocious reputation not only instilled fear but also posed a significant threat to other prominent figures in the underworld. One such adversary was Daniel Petrovsky, also known as Danny the Jew or Danny J. Daniel heads the largest drug smuggling cartel in Sweden and indulges in a lavish lifestyle, evident from his opulent yacht and upscale apartment in Barcelona, which also serves as the nerve center for his drug operations. Crossing paths with such a formidable foe like Daniel Petrovsky, particularly through a risky kidnapping endeavor, was a bold move by Amir Mekky. The feud between Amir Mekky and Daniel Petrovsky reached a critical juncture in 2018, following a harrowing kidnapping incident. Mekky didn't just target any individual, he went after Petrovsky's own half-brother, aiming for ransom. Over the course of 3 agonizing days in captivity, the young man endured brutal torture, bearing visible scars and bruises as testament to his ordeal. Yet the true horror unfolded when Mekky's associates carved a symbol into his back, a Star of David cruelly mocking Petrovsky's nickname, Danny the Jew. This vile act deeply offended Petrovsky, fueling a quest for retribution fueled by both honor and familial loyalty. The response to the kidnapping was swift and brutal. Merely 12 days later, while Mekky was inside a cyber cafe in Malmö, a barrage of gunfire erupted. The assailant unleashed rounds into the cafe with the intent to eliminate Mekky. However, the attack tragically resulted in the deaths of 3 innocent bystanders and left 3 others wounded, leaving behind a scene of utter devastation. After surviving the attempt on his life orchestrated by Daniel's assailant, Mekky endured the injuries inflicted upon him. However, Daniel's failure to eliminate Mekky in one decisive strike proved to be a costly error. As anticipated, the cycle of violence persisted, with Mekky seeking his own brand of vengeance. One of the most chilling acts of retaliation masterminded by Mekky occurred in 2019 with the murder of Carolina Hakim. In a horrifying display of violence, a gunman approached Hakim, who was holding her 2-month-old baby. Without hesitation, the assailant opened fire, fatally injuring Hakim in the attack. Tragically, Hakim wasn't the intended target of this assassination. The true objective was Naif Adawi, Hakim's partner. However, in a grave mistake, the attackers mistakenly targeted Hakim instead of Adawi. This raises the question, what prompted the assailants to target Adawi in the first place? Naif Adawi's connection to Daniel Petrovsky marked him as a prominent figure in the criminal world, earning him the attention of Amir Mekky, who sought revenge for the assassination attempt. Mekky's unsuccessful endeavor to eliminate Adawi only heightened tensions further. Consequently, Mekky shifted his focus to Flemur Bakiri, a close associate of both Petrovsky and Adawi, singling him out as a prime target for retaliation. Bakiri's significant involvement in the drug trade, particularly within Petrovsky's gang, presented Mekky with an opportunity to deal a severe blow to Petrovsky's cartel. The execution of Bakiri was orchestrated by Anas Hamisi, further entangling Mekky in a perilous cycle of vendettas and violence. Hamisi took great care to conceal his identity behind a latex mask before carrying out his lethal mission. 10 shots pierced the air, 8 of them striking their intended target with deadly accuracy, swiftly ending Flemur Bakiri's life just outside his residence. The harrowing incident unfolded in front of Bakiri's wife, who bravely shielded their 2-year-old son from the hail of bullets. With Bakiri's death, Mekky realized his desired vengeance. becoming further enmeshed in a complex web of vendettas. These strategic assaults not only strengthened Mekky's adversaries, but also caught the attention of a formidable coalition known as the Alliance. Consisting of experienced veterans from various criminal enterprises, the Alliance counted members and associates such as Petrovsky and Adawi among its ranks. In light of Mekky's persistent interference in their activities, the Alliance was resolute in their determination to eradicate him, mobilizing all possible resources to carry out their lethal agenda. The Alliance employed the EncroChat service as a covert platform to discuss their illegal activities and transactions discreetly. Within the encrypted messages shared, plans were formulated to eliminate Mekky. Suspicions emerged that both Petrovsky and Adawi were involved in these discussions using the aliases Waterby and Stiffherb, respectively. Unbeknownst to the Alliance, Swedish authorities had been monitoring their communications since EncroChat was compromised by French authorities. Consequently, their presumed secure communications were exposed. Amidst the intercepted messages, one attributed to Stiffherb, believed to be Adawi's account, ominously declares, "Vengeance is coming." Another message linked to Waterby, suspected to be Petrovsky's account, details a gruesome plan to abduct Mekky's father and display his severed head in a public square, a chilling echo of the threats Mekky purportedly made against Petrovsky's brother. Despite the Alliance's elaborate schemes against Mekky, his arrest came as a stroke of luck. Authorities apprehended him in Dubai and extradited him to Spain. However, even behind bars, Mekky remained in jeopardy. A member of the Alliance operating under the alias Sonictin reached out to associates in Spain, expressing a desire to eliminate Mekky even within the confines of prison. The unsettling message included a photograph of Mekky, underscoring the Alliance's relentless pursuit of vengeance, sparing no effort to ensure Mekky's demise. In the midst of mounting tensions, the Alliance redirected their focus toward a fresh target, Musti, a close associate of Amir Mekky. Plans were swiftly devised for his assassination, and a hired hitman was deployed for the task. As Musti ventured outside his apartment, he sensed imminent danger upon spotting the hitman. Reacting with quick reflexes, Musti narrowly avoided the first shot, narrowly escaping death. Yet fortune favored him once more when the hitman's firearm malfunctioned during a second attempt, providing Musti with an opportunity to flee the scene unharmed. Undeterred by their initial setback, the Alliance persisted in their efforts to eliminate Musti, this time enlisting the services of a hitman named Rock Toxic, allegedly through the EncroChat service. However, just before the planned hit, Rock Toxic asserted that his firearm had been stolen following a purported car accident. Subsequent investigations revealed that Rock Toxic had fabricated the incident in a bid to manipulate both factions of the feud, perhaps in an attempt to evade becoming a target himself. Unknown to these individuals, law enforcement agencies had been monitoring their conversations on EncroChat, collecting vital intelligence. Utilizing this information, authorities acted swiftly, arresting 15 members and affiliates of the Alliance. Additionally, Amir Mekky himself was apprehended, potentially signaling the conclusion of the protracted feud between Mekky and Petrovsky.
In recent years, the Black Axe Gang has emerged as one of the most notorious organized crime syndicates in the world. With its roots traced back to Nigeria, this group has expanded its operations globally, engaging in a wide array of criminal activities, including human trafficking, drug trafficking, and money laundering. But what makes the Black Axe particularly alarming is its ability to adapt and thrive within international frameworks, often targeting victims across borders. The Black Axe Gang is primarily made up of members from Nigeria and has been linked to various other gangs and criminal organizations. This connection enables them to create complex networks that facilitate their criminal operations, allowing them to exploit weaknesses in legal and financial systems around the globe. The origins of the Black Axe Gang can be traced back to the 1970s, when it was initially formed as a fraternity on university campuses in Nigeria. What started as a social organization quickly morphed into a criminal syndicate, taking on the mantle of organized crime as its members graduated and entered the workforce. Over the years, they developed a reputation for using violence and intimidation to achieve their goals, leading to their current status as a significant player in the global crime scene. The gang originally formed among students seeking to establish camaraderie and community, but soon adopted a more sinister purpose. The name Black Axe comes from a ceremonial weapon used by its members during initiation rituals, symbolizing loyalty and the readiness to use violence if necessary. This initiation process often involves brutal hazing, which serves to instill a sense of loyalty and camaraderie among members, but also showcases the gang's willingness to use extreme measures to maintain control and secrecy. One of the hallmarks of the Black Axe Gang is its ruthless methodology. They are notorious for using intimidation and violence to control their territory and silence anyone who dares to speak out against them. Reports of extreme violence, including beatings and even murders, serve to reinforce their dominance, creating a culture of fear that stifles resistance. This method of operation has not only instilled fear within the communities they operate, but has also attracted new recruits who are drawn to the perceived power and influence that come with being part of such an organization. Interestingly, the gang has a significant presence in various countries, including Ireland. Victims from all over the world have fallen prey to their schemes, which are often intricately designed to manipulate and deceive. For example, in Ireland, the Black Axe Gang has been linked to the case of XL Plastics, a company just outside Dublin, which was defrauded of approximately €90,000. This case is just one of many that illustrate the gang's international reach and the audacity with which they operate. In addition to these financial crimes, the Black Axe Gang has also targeted individuals in Ireland, employing various methods to exploit their vulnerabilities. Victims have reported being lured into scams under the guise of job offers or business opportunities, only to find themselves trapped in a web of deceit. Many have lost life savings or faced significant financial hardships as a result of these schemes, highlighting the devastating impact of the gang's activities on innocent individuals. Additionally, they targeted a Spanish company called Impri, stealing around €180,000. These cases illustrate the international nature of the gang's operations, demonstrating how stolen money can end up in Ireland, highlighting the country's role as a hub for laundering operations. The Black Axe Gang's ability to move money across borders showcases a sophisticated understanding of financial systems and banking practices, allowing them to exploit vulnerabilities effectively. Their activities often involve a series of complex financial transactions designed to obfuscate the origins of their illicit gains. They use various methods, such as creating shell companies or using cryptocurrency, to disguise the movement of funds. This layered approach makes it challenging for law enforcement to trace the money back to its source, complicating investigations and allowing the gang to continue operating with relative impunity. What's particularly concerning is the coordinated effort required to execute these crimes. Criminal enterprises like the Black Axe Gang are not operating in isolation. They are part of a larger web of international crime that requires someone to connect the dots. Figures like Junior Bo emerge as key players, linking victims with laundering networks. This coordination enables them to move money seamlessly across borders, from places like Spain and Germany to Ireland. The financial transactions are often layered, making it difficult for authorities to trace the origins of the funds. The gang has also forged alliances with other criminal organizations, further complicating efforts to dismantle their operations. By collaborating with other groups, the Black Axe can expand its reach and diversify its activities. This network of criminal associates provides them with additional resources, including access to weapons, illicit goods, and even intelligence on law enforcement activities. The reach of the Black Axe Gang is not confined to financial crimes. It extends into the realm of human trafficking and exploitation. Vulnerable individuals are often targeted, lured with promises of a better life, only to find themselves ensnared in a web of abuse and exploitation. Reports indicate that many victims come from impoverished backgrounds and are manipulated into forced labor or sexual exploitation, revealing a darker side of the gang's operations. The sheer cruelty of these actions highlights the urgent need for awareness and intervention, Human trafficking is a particularly heinous aspect of the gang's operations. Many victims are young women and girls who are promised job opportunities or educational prospects in other countries. Once they arrive, however, they often find themselves trapped in situations of forced labor or sexual exploitation, stripped of their freedom and dignity. The psychological manipulation employed by the gang further complicates these situations, making it difficult for victims to escape or seek help. Moreover, the gang's activities have significant societal implications. The criminal enterprises undermine legitimate businesses and erode trust in financial systems and institutions. As the Black Axe continues to expand its operations, communities are left vulnerable to the impacts of organized crime, which can range from increased violence to a general sense of insecurity. As we delve deeper into the story of the Black Axe Gang, it becomes clear that the threat they pose is not confined to their home country of Nigeria. Instead, they represent a significant challenge to global security and law enforcement. The interconnected nature of their operations means that every country, including Ireland, must remain vigilant against their reach. The response from governments and law enforcement agencies has been mixed, with some countries taking proactive measures to combat these criminal enterprises, while others lag behind. The Black Axe Gang has also adapted to new technologies, including the rise of cryptocurrency and digital transactions. These innovations present new opportunities for laundering money, making it increasingly difficult for authorities to track illicit funds. Criminal organizations are always looking for ways to stay ahead of law enforcement, and the Black Axe is no exception. They have demonstrated an ability to leverage technology to move money internationally, allowing them to evade traditional financial controls. As digital currencies gain traction, the potential for misuse increases. For instance, criminals can convert large amounts of cash into cryptocurrencies, making it easier to transfer funds across borders without drawing attention. This shift to digital financial platforms poses a serious challenge for law enforcement agencies, as they must adapt to evolving methods of crime. In addition to using cryptocurrency, the Black Axe Gang's extensive network enables them to diversify their operations. They often collaborate with other criminal organizations, sharing resources and expertise. This collaboration not only enhances their operations, but also increases the complexity of investigations. When law enforcement agencies attempt to disrupt one part of their network, they often find that the gang has already adapted and moved operations elsewhere. Ultimately, the tale of the Black Axe Gang serves as a stark reminder of the complexities of organized crime today. It underscores the need for international cooperation and robust law enforcement strategies to combat the ever-evolving threat posed by such syndicates. As this story continues to unfold, one can only hope that law enforcement agencies can effectively dismantle these networks and bring the perpetrators to justice. The implications of their activities reach far beyond the financial realm. They have societal consequences that affect communities, families, and individuals. As we witness the growing influence of organizations like the Black Axe Gang, it is crucial to raise awareness about the tactics they employ and the damage they inflict. Through education, vigilance, and community engagement, society can work together to combat organized crime and protect vulnerable populations from exploitation. In conclusion, the Black Axe Gang's reach and adaptability highlight the urgent need for a coordinated response to organized crime. As we continue to monitor their activities and strategies, it is imperative for law enforcement, policymakers, and communities to collaborate in creating comprehensive approaches to mitigate the risks associated with such criminal enterprises. When Russia invaded Ukraine in February 2022, it triggered the largest humanitarian crisis Europe had seen in generations. Nations around the world opened their borders. Aid flowed in by the billions. People, goods, services, and money all moved quickly, and often chaotically. In that chaos, opportunity emerged, not just for governments and aid organizations, but also for criminals. The war created what law enforcement agencies now refer to as a perfect storm for criminal exploitation. In Ukraine, a fragile pre-war economy suddenly became almost entirely dependent on external aid and emergency funding. Borders became porous and overstretched, with millions of refugees crossing in and out. Institutions, legal, financial, and logistical, were under pressure or crumbling. In this kind of environment, oversight fails, audits are postponed, and as history has shown in every major conflict from the Balkans to the Middle East, wherever there is upheaval, there will be those willing to exploit it. In Ireland and across Europe, one of the earliest signs of fraud came not in dark alleyways or secret accounts, but at airports. Reports began surfacing of individuals flying into countries like Ireland on budget airlines, claiming refugee status, collecting welfare payments, and then flying out again, only to return days or weeks later to repeat the process. The affordability of flights, especially via carriers like Ryanair, made this scam low cost and high return. These were not always lone actors. Authorities came to suspect that this was the work of tightly organized groups, mini-criminal networks operating in tandem with contacts inside Ukraine or in other EU countries. The welfare systems of host nations, while compassionate and open in the early months of the war, had not been built to screen for deception on this scale. Governments moved quickly to get money into the hands of those in need, which made fraud detection nearly impossible in the initial stages. Individuals using false or duplicated identities managed to claim multiple benefits. Some used forged documentation, while others took advantage of weak verification standards for temporary protection. The money collected was either spent quickly within host countries or, more commonly, carried back across borders, either physically or by wiring through unregistered transfer services. Charity became the dominant narrative of the global response to Ukraine. Thousands of humanitarian organizations mobilized to deliver food, medicine, clothing, and shelter. Millions were raised through public appeals. But with this wave of generosity came another kind of activity, one less public and more parasitic. Fraudsters began creating fake NGOs and aid organizations. These entities had websites, bank accounts, volunteers, and even media presence. Some of them actively solicited donations online, through crowdfunding platforms and crypto wallets. Others posed as transport companies ferrying goods into Ukraine, but diverted those supplies to be sold on the black market, often back inside the very countries where they had been donated. Legitimate charities too, overwhelmed by scale and speed, found their supplies siphoned off. Trucks filled with humanitarian aid would vanish somewhere between European depots and Ukrainian cities. In some cases, drivers and coordinators were bribed or threatened into selling off goods. Profits from these transactions were then reinvested into other criminal schemes or laundered through real estate, luxury goods, or crypto. Inside Ukraine, the breakdown of normal governance in some areas created vacuums quickly filled by opportunists. Ukraine had already been grappling with endemic corruption before the war. The pressure of conflict simply made the system more exploitable. Border officials, military officers, and civil servants were now often working in extremely difficult conditions. Some took bribes, others turned a blind eye. One of the fastest-growing black market services in the first year of the war was the illegal movement of men out of Ukraine. With martial law in place, men of fighting age were not allowed to leave the country, but smugglers offered services to circumvent the rules. Young men were hidden in car boots, trucks, and false compartments. In some instances, border crossings were managed with forged medical documents or false identification. The families of these men were often willing to pay large sums to keep their sons from the front lines. Money from these smuggling operations flowed into safe houses, used car businesses, and crypto accounts. It was common for these services to be managed by loosely organized but well-connected groups, sometimes with ties to existing criminal outfits in Moldova, Romania, and even Russia. Organized crime does not operate in silos. What begins as a local scheme in a border town quickly becomes part of a wider network when the profits are high and the risks appear manageable. The Ukrainian conflict, like others before it, attracted the interest of global crime syndicates. In Ireland, criminal organizations with a long history of smuggling and drug trafficking began forging relationships with new partners from Ukraine and neighboring countries. Ukrainian individuals involved in cash couriering or benefit fraud were linked to older Irish gangs involved in laundering drug money or purchasing real estate. In Germany, police uncovered connections between Ukrainian trafficking rings and Balkan mafias already operating across the Schengen zone. In Spain and the Netherlands, the same ports once used to smuggle cocaine now found themselves part of a new logistics network, this time for moving weapons, stolen aid goods, and people. These networks evolved fast. They didn't rely on traditional borders or nationality. They used encrypted communication, low-cost air travel, forged documents, and digital anonymity. In many ways, the war gave these organizations both cover and opportunity. The digital revolution in crime has reached a new phase. In Ukraine, the government's early adoption of cryptocurrency for donations made headlines. It was hailed as a model of modern war fundraising. But that same environment allowed criminals to hide in plain sight. Many online wallets claiming to raise money for humanitarian causes were instead being used to launder proceeds from fraud, smuggling, and even cybercrime. Blockchain analysts traced millions of euros worth of crypto flowing through anonymous accounts linked to darknet markets or unlicensed exchanges. Some of these wallets were connected to known ransomware gangs previously identified as operating from Eastern Europe. Criminals used crypto not just to move money, but to conceal it. They relied on privacy coins, crypto mixers, and fast-moving exchanges in jurisdictions with weak regulation. In the fog of war, few had time to verify whether a Help Ukraine wallet was legitimate or criminal. Beyond digital crime, there was a physical laundering process that ran parallel to the more high-tech schemes. In Ukraine and its bordering countries, traditional smuggling made a comeback. Diesel became one of the most valuable commodities. With wartime shortages and logistical bottlenecks, diesel could be smuggled in and sold at inflated rates to farmers, civilians, or even military units. Tobacco, alcohol, and luxury items followed similar patterns. These items were often bought with illicit funds, drug profits, or stolen aid money, and sold through informal channels to produce clean, usable cash. Criminals used old Balkan smuggling routes and built new ones through Polish, Slovakian, and Moldovan corridors. Many of these same networks had been active decades earlier during the Yugoslav wars and were simply reactivated and repurposed. Perhaps the most disturbing dimension of the war's criminal economy was the exploitation of human lives under the veil of protection. Millions of Ukrainians, mostly women and children, fled the war in search of safety. Among them, traffickers saw profit. Criminal organizations disguised their operations as safe passage networks. They promised housing, employment, or transport to women escaping occupied regions. But many of these women ended up in prostitution rings or unregulated labor markets in Western Europe. Reports surfaced of women who had disappeared from refugee registries or stopped answering calls from aid organizations. Some had been moved multiple times, living under fake names, their identification taken from them. The money made from human trafficking was then reinvested in other operations or laundered through hospitality businesses, nightclubs, and service industry fronts. In Ireland, the impact of these criminal operations is being felt in quiet but significant ways. The guards have investigated multiple cases of suspicious Ukrainian nationals purchasing high-value items in cash, entering and exiting the country at unusual frequencies, or registering for benefits using false addresses. Some of these individuals have been linked to courier networks, suspected of moving undeclared money through European airports. Others are believed to be working with Irish gangs to launder money through car dealerships, tech equipment, or housing scams. What makes these cases difficult is the overlap with legitimate refugee movements. Many are genuine people in need, but embedded within those groups are opportunists, fraudsters, and in some cases, professional criminals leveraging the open-door policies for personal gain. The long-term effects of this convergence between war and crime are only beginning to unfold. Experts believe that the Ukrainian war, like many others, will leave behind not just rubble and trauma, but also a hardened criminal infrastructure that will continue to operate long after peace returns. Weapons will remain in circulation. Veterans will enter the underworld, Corrupt money will continue to move through businesses and banks, and the new connections forged between Ukrainian, Irish, and international gangs will solidify into more permanent alliances. Crime evolves with war. It adapts to the new terrain, and unless authorities keep pace through international cooperation, digital forensics, and structural reform, it will only grow stronger in the shadows of the battles we see on our screens. In Dublin, Ireland, he was known as a hero, a firefighter, a paramedic, and a family man. But in October 2025, Terence Crosbie stood in a Boston courtroom, convicted of rape and sentenced to up to 9 years in prison. In this video, we trace the full story, from his early days in Dublin to the moment a Massachusetts jury found him guilty of a violent crime that shocked 2 countries. Terence Crosbie was born and raised in Dublin. Those who knew the Crosbie family described them as respected and close-knit, the kind of people who turned up at local fundraisers and church events. He attended Gaelscoil Sholaiste Muir, a small Irish language school near Parnell Square. One of his former teachers would later recall him as polite, quiet, and dedicated, not a troublemaker, not a rebel. Little is known about his teenage years, but neighbors remember him as a sports enthusiast and someone who spoke proudly of wanting to help others. By his early 20s, he'd found his calling, not in an office or a trade, but on the front lines of public safety. Crosbie joined the Dublin Fire Brigade in the mid-2000s. By 2017, he was already a registered paramedic, a respected member of the team. Colleagues described him as loyal, steady under pressure, and deeply involved in the life of the city. He was the one you'd want beside you in a burning building, one firefighter later told the Irish Times. He spent nearly 2 decades saving lives, responding to car crashes, fires, and medical emergencies across Dublin. Off-duty, he was a husband and a father to 2 young daughters. Those close to him said he was devoted to his family and proud of his work. For all appearances, Crosbie's life was steady and admirable, until March 2024, when everything changed. In March 2024, Crosbie joined a delegation of Dublin firefighters traveling to Boston to participate in the city's legendary St. Patrick's Day parade. It was meant to be a celebration, Irish pride, camaraderie, and international friendship. He checked into the Omni Parker House, a historic hotel in downtown Boston, with several colleagues. Among them was fellow firefighter Liam O'Brien. But what began as a festive weekend would soon spiral into a criminal investigation, one that would dominate headlines in both countries. According to court records, on the night of March 15, 2024, Crosbie, O'Brien, and a 28-year-old attorney spent the evening drinking at a pub called the Black Rose. Later, she returned to the hotel room with O'Brien. The two had consensual sex, after which she fell asleep in a second bed in the room, fully clothed, under the covers. Just before 2 a.m., prosecutors said Crosbie used a hotel keycard to enter the room. The woman awoke to find him on top of her. She fought back, ran into the hallway, and called a friend before going straight to Massachusetts General Hospital, where a rape kit was collected. That evidence, combined with hotel keycard logs and surveillance footage, would later become central to the prosecution's case. By the next day, Boston police were investigating. Crosbie agreed to an interview with detectives on March 16th, but hours later, he booked a flight home, 2 days earlier than planned. As the plane prepared for takeoff from Logan Airport, Massachusetts state troopers boarded and removed him from the aircraft. He was arrested on the tarmac, charged with rape, and held on $100,000 bail. For the first time in his adult life, the Dublin firefighter, once trusted to save others, found himself behind bars. Crosbie's legal battle would stretch across 2 years and 2 trials. His first trial, in June 2025, ended in a mistrial. The jury deadlocked after 22 hours of deliberation. A second trial began in October 2025. This time, the evidence, hotel security footage, keycard data, and DNA traces, convinced the jury. After 15 hours of deliberation, Crosbie was found guilty of 1 count of rape. Prosecutors argued that the attack was a betrayal of trust, a predatory act against a defenseless woman. Crosbie took the stand in his own defense, admitting he entered the room but denying any sexual contact. Still, the jury was unanimous. The verdict sent shockwaves through Boston and through the Irish firefighting community. The victim, now 29, also gave a tearful statement describing the attack's lasting trauma.
How can I put into words how this rape impacted me, as it has impacted me in so many ways and changed my life forever? The trauma brought upon me that night has hurt my health, my work, my friends, my family, and the sense of safety and security and well-being I knew every day before I was attacked. I'm reminded constantly of the horrible thing that was done to me, and it has been a struggle to heal and to grow back into a happy person who can enjoy her life.
Crosbie also spoke briefly.
I understand the seriousness of the situation, but I ask for leniency because of my 18 years serving the citizens of Dublin and because I'm the sole provider for my family, including my wife and 2 daughters.
On October 30th, 2025, Judge Joshua Wall handed down the sentence of minimum of 7 years, no more than 9 years in a Massachusetts state prison.
This case involved a victim who was safely asleep under the covers of a locked hotel room. Terence Crosbie attacked a defenseless woman while she was asleep, committing a predatory sexual act and an act of extraordinary sexual violence. The victim resisted while Crosbie persisted, prolonging the woman's fear and trauma by continuing to assault her while she attempted to escape. The level and length of violence was an aggravating factor, while taking into consideration Crosbie's work in his community.
Crosbie was transferred to the Sousa Baranowski Correctional Center, a maximum security facility in Massachusetts. His attorneys immediately announced plans to appeal, calling the verdict a miscarriage of justice. In Dublin, the fire brigade confirmed he was on administrative leave pending an internal review. Dublin City Council declined to comment further. Meanwhile, more than 80 pages of character letters from friends, family, and fellow firefighters were submitted on his behalf. But for the court, those letters could not erase the evidence or the pain inflicted. The case sparked intense media coverage across both sides of the Atlantic. In Boston, outlets like the Boston Globe and NBC Boston described the verdict as justice served for a brutal assault. In Ireland, reactions were mixed. Some defended Crosbie, insisting he was wrongly convicted. Others expressed outrage at the evidence, pointing to an old 2017 tweet where Crosbie had made a crude joke about Sweden being a rape capital. That post resurfaced during trial coverage, fueling online debate and damaging his reputation further. Victim advocacy groups in the US praised the outcome, calling it a victory for survivors who too often see cases like this dismissed. But in Dublin, many sympathized with Crosbie's wife and daughters, left to face the fallout alone. Terence Crosbie once ran into burning buildings to save strangers. Today, he sits in a prison cell thousands of miles from home, convicted of an act of violence that destroyed another person's sense of safety. His story is a tragic descent, from respected firefighter to convicted rapist, from hero to pariah. Whether future appeals will change his fate remains to be seen. But for now, the name Terence Crosbie is etched in headlines, a cautionary tale of trust, power, and the choices that can end a life's work in a single night. Sometimes a story captures public sympathy almost instantly. A hard-working immigrant, a family man, detained, separated from his wife, held in harsh conditions, the outrage feels automatic. But what happens when more details emerge? What happens when the story becomes more complicated than the headline? Today we're taking a deep dive into the case of Seamus Culleton, an Irish man detained by ICE agents in Texas, whose situation sparked political reaction in Ireland, media attention in the United States, thousands in public donations, and then a noticeable shift in public sentiment. This case touches on immigration enforcement, media narratives, personal accountability, and something I call the perfect victim problem. This isn't a simple story, so let's go step by step. Seamus Culleton is originally from Kilkenny, Ireland. In 2009, He traveled to the United States on a 90-day visa. For many Irish citizens, that's a relatively straightforward process, essentially a short-term legal stay for tourism or business. But Culleton didn't return to Ireland when that visa expired. He overstayed. That meant from that point forward, he was in violation of US immigration law. He became undocumented. Now, overstaying a visa is one of the most common forms of illegal immigration in the United States. It's not dramatic. It's not crossing a border in secret. It's simply staying after permission expires. In the years that followed, Culleton built a life in the Boston area. He started a construction business. He paid taxes. He integrated into the community. He married an American woman named Tiffany. According to accounts, he later applied for a green card through marriage, a legal pathway available to spouses of US citizens. During that process, he reportedly had work authorization. On the surface, it looked like a classic story of reinvention. An Irishman moves abroad, builds a business, falls in love, starts over. Then in September, he was stopped while driving and arrested by ICE agents, US Immigration and Customs Enforcement. He was transferred to a detention facility in El Paso, Texas, and that's when the story exploded. Culleton spoke from detention to Ireland's national broadcaster, RTE. In that interview, he described dire conditions. He compared the facility to a modern-day concentration camp. He claimed detainees were underfed. He said he feared for his safety. He described overcrowding and harsh treatment. That kind of language carries enormous emotional weight. The case immediately resonated in Ireland. Senior Irish political leaders, including the Taoiseach and Taoiseach, publicly commented. There were diplomatic conversations. His elderly mother in Kilkenny spoke out. His wife in Boston advocated publicly. A GoFundMe campaign was launched. It quickly raised around €27,000. In the United States, this case unfolded against a highly charged immigration backdrop. Under the administration of Donald Trump, immigration enforcement had been significantly intensified. Funding for ICE operations had increased. Deportations were politically central. Public opinion in America was, and remains, divided. There is broad support among many Americans for deporting undocumented immigrants who have committed violent or serious crimes. But cases involving undocumented individuals who appear law-abiding, family-oriented, and economically productive are much more controversial. Culleton's case seemed to fit that second category, and that's why it gained traction. He wasn't portrayed as dangerous. He wasn't portrayed as criminal. He was portrayed as ordinary. And ordinary stories resonate. Early coverage framed Culleton as a tax-paying business owner, a husband applying for legal status, a community member, a victim of harsh immigration enforcement. One Irish politician reportedly described him as exactly the kind of person you would want living in your country. This is what I call a symbol case, when an individual becomes shorthand for a larger political argument. In this case, the argument was, ICE is detaining people who don't deserve it. But symbol cases are fragile, because symbols require simplicity, and real people are rarely simple. As the story gained attention, journalists and online users began digging into Culleton's background, and that's when the narrative shifted. In 2008, before moving to the United States, Culleton had been arrested in Ireland in connection with a seizure of 25 MDMA tablets. He was formally charged. There were two main drug-related charges: simple possession and possession for sale or supply, effectively a drug-dealing allegation. Now, context matters here. 25 tablets is not a large-scale trafficking operation. It's not cartel-level activity. But legally, possession for supply is more serious than simple possession. The distinction often depends on quantity and intent. He was due to appear in court in 2009. He didn't show up. A bench warrant was issued for his arrest. There were also two reported criminal damage charges around the same time. Details of those incidents have not been extensively publicized, but criminal damage cases in district court are typically lower-level property offenses. Still, the key fact is this: he left Ireland around the same time he was due in court. Those charges remain unresolved. That context was not part of the original media narrative. It emerged days later, after local newspaper archives were located and verified. Once those details came out, public reaction shifted. because now the story wasn't just hard-working immigrant detained. It became man who left Ireland after criminal charges now detained in the US, even though those charges are nearly 2 decades old, even though they were never proven in court, even though 25 tablets is not major organized crime. The framing changed, and framing changes everything. Then came another revelation. Culleton and his wife had spoken publicly about wanting to start a family, but it emerged that he already had 2 daughters in Ireland, now adults. They spoke publicly, expressing hurt and frustration. They described him as largely absent during their upbringing. They pushed back against what they felt was a portrayal of him as a devoted family man beginning a new chapter. This added emotional complexity. For supporters, it complicated the image. For critics, it reinforced doubts. For his daughters, it was personal. And this highlights something important. Public causes often overlook private histories. When someone becomes a symbol, parts of their story can be amplified, and other parts can be ignored. But ignored parts don't disappear. They resurface. There's a broader lesson here. In politically charged debates, immigration, criminal justice, homelessness, advocates often highlight the most sympathetic examples: the model worker, the loving parent, the blameless individual. Because emotionally compelling stories move public opinion. But when someone is presented as flawless, any imperfection can trigger backlash. It doesn't mean the person deserves detention. It doesn't mean past allegations justify everything. It doesn't erase sympathy, but it fractures the simplicity. And once simplicity is gone, so is consensus. Reports indicated that after the additional background emerged, fundraising momentum slowed. That doesn't mean support vanished, but it shows how sensitive public sympathy is to narrative shifts. So where does this leave us? This case forces difficult questions. Should unresolved allegations from 2008 define someone forever? Does overstaying a visa justify long-term detention? Should past legal troubles be disclosed up front when asking for public support? How responsible are media outlets when presenting someone as symbolic? It's possible to hold multiple truths. Someone can have made mistakes as a young man and still face consequences that feel severe years later. Someone can overstay a visa and still build a real, meaningful life. Someone can be sympathetic without being perfect. The Seamus Culleton case isn't black and white. It's not a clean morality tale. It's a reminder that in modern political debates, the rush to create heroes and villains often collapses under the weight of reality. And maybe the real lesson is this: be cautious of simple narratives, because real life is almost always more complicated. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Did public sympathy shift unfairly? Or did the new information fundamentally change the case? On a quiet day in late August 2019, a 44-year-old woman named Aimee Betro stepped off a transatlantic flight at Manchester Airport. She moved like any tourist might, alone, inconspicuous, with a string of hotel reservations in cities like Derby, London, Brighton, and Birmingham. With no criminal history and no one expecting her arrival, her presence raised no red flags. Yet, she had not come to sightsee. 2 weeks after her arrival, in a quiet corner of Birmingham, she made a move, then made it again. Both attempts failed. By the time law enforcement began piecing together the puzzle, Aimee Betro had already vanished. Her swift disappearance would trigger an international investigation that would stretch across continents and last nearly 5 years. The chain of events that brought an American woman to a British suburb with deadly intent began more than a year earlier. In July 2018, a violent altercation took place inside a Birmingham clothing store. It involved 2 families, the Ali family, who owned the boutique, and the Nazirs, a father and son duo from Derby. What began as a heated argument escalated into physical violence. Tempers flared, windows were shattered, and several people were injured. Most viewed it as just another street-level dispute. But beneath the surface, resentment hardened into something more dangerous. By the following summer, that anger had not dissipated. It had festered. Authorities allege that Mohammed Alam, 56, and his son Mohammed Nazir, 30, sought revenge. No longer interested in legal battles or verbal threats, they were determined to exact retribution. According to court documents, they turned to a method far more chilling. They sought to hire someone to carry out a killing on their behalf. Their target? Sikander Ali, the son of the boutique owner and one of the central figures in the 2018 clash. Aimee Betro didn't match the typical profile of a contract killer. A former employee of the Milwaukee Brewers baseball team, she had a background in childcare and a social media trail that included selfies, music festivals, and late-night cocktails. But on 22 August 2019, she landed in the UK with no clear reason for travel and no return ticket. Authorities now believe her tourist act was a facade. Over the next 2 weeks, she travelled between cities under her own name, staying in hotels and blending in. Surveillance footage captured her in Brighton enjoying drinks, posting light-hearted content online, and referencing a partner in crime. She also purchased a used Mercedes-Benz shortly after arriving, which police say became her mobile base of operations. Behind the scenes, phone data would later confirm her contact with both Muhammad Alam and Muhammad Nazir. It was not a sightseeing tour, it was reconnaissance. On 7 September 2019, just before sunset, the quiet street of Misham Grove in Acox Green, Birmingham, became the scene of an attempted assassination. Aimee arrived in her Mercedes, veiled and composed. She walked calmly toward a parked vehicle. Inside, it was Sikander Ali. Without warning, she raised a firearm and took aim, but the weapon failed to discharge. It jammed. Ali, realizing the danger, reversed his vehicle in panic, hitting a nearby car's open door. The would-be assassin turned and fled. She quickly abandoned the car and booked a taxi, calmly speaking to the dispatcher. No trace of urgency in her voice. It would be weeks before police pieced together that the woman was not a resident or a passerby. She was a foreign national brought in with a singular objective. Just hours after her botched hit, Aimee returned. This time, under cover of darkness and without disguise, she arrived by taxi at the same location. The family inside the home was asleep. She stepped out, raised the same weapon, and fired 3 shots into the upper floor of the building. No one was injured, but the bullets shattered glass and tore into interior walls. Her goal now was not a kill, it was a message. In the hours that followed, the Ali family received a string of threatening messages. The sender accused them of betrayal and warned them not to test her further. "Stop playing hide and seek," one message read. "You're lucky it jammed." Another offered a promise. "Watch your back, I'll be shedding blood soon." Then, just as quickly as she had arrived, she disappeared, boarding a flight back to the US on 9 September 2019. In the aftermath, law enforcement began collecting evidence. CCTV footage, shell casings, and a registered Mercedes abandoned near the scene pointed to an unknown woman. Slowly, investigators with the West Midlands Police and Derbyshire Constabulary began to connect the dots. Hotel bookings, phone records, and digital footprints led to the identification of Aimee Betro. Surveillance showed a link to Muhammad Nazir, who had travelled to the US shortly after the failed shooting. His travel paperwork listed Betro as his emergency contact, a damning association. Then came a crucial discovery. Customs officers flagged a package containing firearm components shipped from Illinois to the UK. The return address matched Betro's residence in Wisconsin. This shipment added a new layer: illegal importation of weapons, with the implication that the hit had been planned long before she landed in Manchester. Nazir was arrested after returning to the UK, followed by his father Alam. In 2022, their case came before Birmingham Crown Court. Prosecutors laid out a calculated assassination plot born from a personal feud, not gang warfare or organised crime. The jury heard how Aimee Betro had been recruited as a disposable outsider to carry out the killing. The evidence included hotel receipts, communication records, and travel logs. Even Nazir's emergency contact form, listing Betro's name, was presented. Nazir was convicted of conspiracy to murder, illegal possession of a firearm, firearm importation, and perverting justice. Alam was also convicted of conspiracy to murder, but the woman at the heart of the crime, the would-be shooter, remained beyond their reach. Between 2019 and 2024, Aimee Betro became a ghost. Her name was placed on an Interpol red notice, and international law enforcement kept a watchful eye. Yet, she evaded capture. No sightings, no digital traces. It wasn't police work that finally tracked her down. It was journalism. Reporters at Mail Online began reviewing her past social media activity, analyzing backgrounds in selfies and comparing architecture. They traced her to a residential complex near Yerevan, the capital of Armenia. She had been living there quietly, under her real name, paying cash for rent and working remotely. Her neighbors barely knew her. Some remembered her shouting at a cat, but little else stood out. Once authorities confirmed her location, British officials requested secrecy while working with Armenian counterparts. In early 2024, Armenian law enforcement carried out a dawn raid. Aimee Betro did not resist. She was detained without incident and held pending extradition. In January 2025, she was escorted to the UK under tight security. The woman who had evaded justice for nearly 5 years now found herself on British soil, wearing handcuffs instead of sunglasses. She appeared before Birmingham Magistrates Court shortly after her arrival. Calm, reserved, and plainly dressed, she confirmed her identity and gave an address in Armenia. There was no bail application. The charges read out were severe: conspiracy to murder, possession of a firearm with intent to cause fear, and unlawful importation of ammunition. Aimee Betro's next appearance came via video link from HMP New Hall, a women's prison in Wakefield. She pleaded not guilty to all charges, responding to each with composure. "Correct," she said, when asked to confirm her plea. The trial ended on Tuesday, the 12th of August 2025, which was presided over by the same judge who sentenced her co-conspirators. Nazir is currently serving a 30-year sentence. His father received 15 years. Aimee Betro was found guilty of taking part in a botched assassination attempt on a Birmingham street. Prosecutors told the court Betro, who was living in Armenia until earlier this year, flew to Britain in August 2019 to take part in a plot orchestrated by co-conspirators Mohammed Aslam, 56, and his son. This is not a story about organized crime or global syndicates. It's a tale of a local feud that spiraled into international intrigue, a transatlantic plot involving a bitter rivalry, a mysterious American, and an elaborate game of cat and mouse. 5 years after a failed shooting in Birmingham, all 3 conspirators are finally in custody. As Aimee Betro awaits sentencing, many questions remain unanswered. What led her to agree to such a plan? How did a woman from Wisconsin end up firing bullets into a British home? And why did she disappear so completely, only to be found by a clue in an Instagram photo? Until then, all that remains is silence, and the echoes of a gun that failed to fire.
Officer shot multiple times.
Deputies say the killer could be anywhere.
Today, we have identified Christopher Jordan Dorner as a suspect in this double homicide.
Rambling manifesto posted on Dorner's Facebook page. He details everything.
There is a possibility that he's out here, and that's why we're out here searching.
A manhunt underway right now for a former Los Angeles police officer accused of murdering 3 people.
Held a pistol out the window and fired multiple shots.
Before we dive into this intense manhunt, let's talk about Christopher Dorner. Born in New York and raised in Southern California, Dorner was the only African-American student in his school from 1st to 7th grade, often getting into fights due to racial issues. As a teenager, he aspired to become a police officer and joined a youth program with the La Palma Orange County Police Department. Dorner graduated from Southern Utah University in 2001 with a major in political science and a minor in psychology. He also played football as a running back from 1999 to 2000, making him a big, athletic guy. In 2002, he joined the United States Navy Reserves, eventually reaching the rank of lieutenant and earning marksmanship ribbons for both rifle and pistol shooting. This expertise with firearms would later play a significant role in the events to come. While serving as a naval reservist, Dorner entered the LAPD Police Academy in 2005. Neighbors described him as admired, well-liked, and someone who generally kept to himself. He was married briefly, divorcing in 2007 without having children. Friends noted that he was friendly and often smiling, but some ex-girlfriends mentioned he could quickly turn hostile, indicating underlying issues. Now this is where the story takes a darker turn. In July 2007, during his probationary period, Christopher Dorner was paired with training officer Teresa Evans. They responded to a disturbance at the DoubleTree Hotel in San Pedro. Evans didn't think highly of Dorner's police abilities, considering him sloppy and clumsy, especially since he had accidentally shot himself in the hand at the police academy. Despite this, Dorner had earned marksmanship ribbons. He once confided in her that he felt the LAPD had discriminated against him as a black man, and that he intended to sue. The incident that triggered the subsequent events involved Christopher Gettler, a man with mental health issues. After arresting him, Evans warned Dorner about needing to improve his police work. In response, Dorner filed a complaint against Evans, accusing her of kicking Gettler during the arrest after he had been tased and had ceased resisting. This led to an LAPD investigation. Dorner's credibility was questioned because he waited a few weeks before reporting the alleged kick, which seemed retaliatory against Evans for her criticism. This pattern of behavior was notable in Dorner. He often harbored grudges and sought revenge against those he believed had wronged him. 3 hotel employees who witnessed the incident told LAPD detectives they didn't see Evans kick Gettler. Gettler was brought to the police station and received medical treatment for facial injuries, but did not initially report being kicked. However, he later told his father about the kick and reiterated this in a videotaped interview with Dorner's attorney.
Being interviewed and tape recorded with his permission is Christopher Gettler. Is that correct, Chris?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, I want to ask you about the police contact that you had with the at the DoubleTree Hotel. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
Okay. Do you remember being taken into custody by the police?
Uh-huh.
Okay. Do you remember whether there was a struggle?
Mm-hmm.
And during that struggle, were you kicked in the face?
Mm-hmm.
You have to say yes or no.
Yes.
Okay. And do you remember how many times you were kicked in the face?
Once.
Okay. And do you remember where you were kicked in the face?
Right here.
Okay. And do you remember who kicked you in the face?
An officer.
Do you remember what sex? Was it a male or female?
It was a female.
When Gettler testified at Dorner's disciplinary hearing, his responses were generally incoherent and non-responsive. This made it difficult to determine if Teresa Evans had actually kicked him. The investigation concluded there was no evidence of kicking, and that Dorner had lied. Consequently, in 2008, Dorner was fired from the LAPD for making false statements, a severe consequence. Dorner appealed the decision with the help of former police captain turned attorney Randall Kwan, but the appeal was unsuccessful. Essentially, it was a case of conflicting testimonies, and the police sided with the training officer over the probationary officer. After his dismissal, Dorner fell into a deep depression. He isolated himself in his Las Vegas home, cut off from family and friends, with nothing to do but brood over his situation. An ex-girlfriend had previously posted a warning on the website don'tdatehimgirl.com, advising others to stay away from him if they valued their sanity. She described him as extremely paranoid, always believing someone was out to get him. Given his personality, being fired, regardless of the truth behind the incident, left him very angry and resentful. It all started on February 1st, 2013, when Anderson Cooper received a package at the CNN office. The package contained detailed information about Christopher Dorner's grievances against the LAPD.
Do it!
2 days later, on February 3rd, 2013, the bodies of Monica Kwan and her fiancé Keith Lawrence were discovered shot to death in Keith's car outside their condo in Irvine. Both had been executed with bullets to the back of the head. The police noted that Monica still wore her diamond engagement ring, indicating it wasn't a robbery but a close-range ambush. There were no signs of a struggle, and neither had enemies. Monica was a basketball coach at Cal State Fullerton, and Keith was an officer in the Department of Public Safety. They had just gotten engaged a few days earlier. The police questioned Monica's father, Randall Kwan, about who might want to harm his daughter. Randall Kwan, the first Chinese-American captain of the LAPD, had led a squad targeting Asian gangs and recently worked as a lawyer representing officers facing termination. Despite this, Randall couldn't think of anyone who would want to hurt him or his family. During the investigation into this double homicide, the police were puzzled as to why no one had heard the gunshots, despite the murders occurring right outside an apartment building full of people. It seemed impossible that no one had heard anything, leading the police to suspect that the attacker had used a silencer. Additionally, they discovered that someone had been stalking Monica in the days leading up to the murders.
With police on tactical alert across this region tonight, men and women in uniform as well as the community are remembering Monica Kwan, a heartbreaking day as police search for a killer.
The very next day, Christopher Dorner posted his manifesto online from the Highview Inn and Suites in Manhattan Beach. This 11,000-word document lined his motives for the murders of Monica Kwan and Keith Lawrence, and for the subsequent attacks he planned. Dorner claimed he wanted to clear his name and vowed to target members of the Board of Rights who had ruled against him, as well as the LAPD hierarchy that had enforced his punishment. He believed his former lawyer, Randall Kwan, had been more loyal to the LAPD than to him, and he intended to go after Kwan and his loved ones. In his manifesto, Dorner listed people who had wronged him throughout his life and those he would miss, knowing he wouldn't survive his planned actions. Among those he mentioned missing were friends, colleagues, and public figures like Joe Biden, Hillary Clinton, Chris Christie, George W. Bush, General Petraeus, Tim Tebow, Bill Cosby, Anthony Bourdain, and Charlie Sheen. Primarily, he named many LAPD officers as his enemies, essentially declaring war on the LAPD.
Police officer, and you hear this police chief in LA, Charlie Back, talking. He was asked, this guy was trained. He worked with the LA Police Department for a couple of years, not to mention he's a marksman, ex-reservist. Right. So he's trained well. He appears to know what he's doing.
He is. I mean, he was an officer, not an enlisted man, but an officer in the Naval Reserve. And so, yeah, he knows what he's doing. He knows weapons. He's a rifle marksman, pistol marksman in the reserves. He's been very well trained. You know, LAPD, some of the best trained officers in the country. He was there from 2005 to 2008. And I tell you, this manifesto, it scares the hell out of me.
Let's get to it. We have a couple chunks. I want to just read this first one here. Quote, you better have all your officers, radio, phone muster on or off duty every hour on the hour. You may have the resources and manpower, but you are reactive and predictable. Goes on. I have the strength and benefits of being unpredictable, unconventional, and unforgiving.
On February 5th, Christopher Dorner checked into the naval base in San Diego and was soon named a prime suspect in the double homicide. The next day, he abruptly left the base, bypassing the usual checkout procedures, likely aware that the authorities were closing in on him. Later in San Diego, Dorner attempted to steal a boat from 81-year-old Carlos Caprioblio. Pointing a handgun at Caprioblio, Dorner demanded to be taken to Mexico, saying, "I don't want to kill you, but you're going to take me to Mexico." However, unfamiliar with sailing, Dorner mistakenly threw the mooring rope into the water, where it became entangled in the propeller, thwarting his escape. He tied up Caprioblio, stole his cell phone, and vanished. On February 7th, at around 1 a.m., 2 LAPD officers were on their way to a protection detail for one of the officers named in Dorner's manifesto, when they were approached by a man named Lee McDaniel. McDaniel reported seeing someone resembling Dorner at a gas station. The officers investigated and began following a suspicious pickup truck. Suddenly, Dorner emerged from the vehicle and opened fire with an assault rifle, grazing one officer's forehead before speeding away. 20 minutes later, Dorner ambushed 2 officers from a neighboring police department who were stopped at a red light. He fired 13 rounds of armor-piercing ammunition, killing Officer Michael Crane and critically injuring his partner, who survived after undergoing emergency surgery.
It sounds like your officers were completely ambushed. Was there any intelligence? Was there any warning, given that the LAPD was looking for this suspect? Did those officers in that car last night on their patrol have any idea that there was a chance this suspect might do something like
yes,
that? That they should be on extra alert.
Yesterday evening, the information was disseminated by the LAPD via the FBI's JRIC, the Joint Regional Intelligence Center. So all law enforcement agencies in the region were aware of that. We disseminated the information about the suspect and his vehicle and his intent to our officers, as I believe all agencies did last night. We are concentrating on calls for service that are of a high priority, that are threats to public safety. Essentially, we're not going to go on barking dog calls today.
We saw at some of the perimeter of the scenes that officers from all different sort of agencies were carrying shotguns and rifles. I mean, how on edge are officers? I mean, they're being targeted, so how on edge will they be?
Well, I don't know that anybody's on edge, but certainly officers are prepared, officers are alert. This is a somewhat unprecedented, or at least a very rare occurrence for us, where you have a trained and heavily armed person who is hunting for police officers.
As you can imagine, Los Angeles turned into a bit of a war zone during this period. The police, growing increasingly paranoid, began to open fire on individuals they mistakenly believed to be Christopher Dorner. This heightened state of fear and tension affected everyone, particularly the police.
Just to go back a little bit, this has left cops so jittery in the area, and there was actually a shooting that was based on mistaken identity. Cops thought that they had this guy, and that resulted in a shooting. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yes, Ryan, what happened was we were talking about those security details. Well, in Torrance, California, in the Los Angeles area, the police were on watch for one of the men mentioned in the list. A truck pulled up. They suspected for a moment that this was the vehicle belonging to Dorner. Basically, they opened fire. They hit two a newspaper delivery man was hit in the hand. The other one was okay. And they opened fire on another vehicle in Torrance. No incident, no injuries there, but an innocent victim, all of this, as police were indeed on very high alert, Ryan.
At 8:30 a.m. on February 7th, Christopher Dorner's burnt-out truck was discovered approximately 80 miles from Los Angeles in Big Bear Lake. Inside the truck, deputies found the charred remnants of 2 AR-15 assault rifles, a portion of a Glock handgun, and scattered remnants of a tent, a survival knife, and a camping stove. Surrounding the truck and scattered in the snow were hundreds of high-caliber rifle rounds that had exploded in the fire. Dorner had vanished into the mountains, evading capture. Authorities offered a $1 million reward for any information that could lead to the capture of Christopher Dorner. However, despite the incentive, Dorner remained at large. It was clear that authorities were resolved to not take him alive.
Good morning, Dan, from snowy Southern California. Bad weather here has made it tough on the search efforts. Authorities had to call their troops off the mountain last night, but they are out there in force first thing this morning. So far, though, the only fresh glimpse of the fugitive were new pictures taken 2 weeks ago. Surveillance cameras captured these images of Christopher Dorner. The trouble is, they were taken 2 weeks ago in Orange County, not far from where Monica Kwan and her fiancé Keith Lawrence were murdered last Sunday. The last photos taken of Dorner before he disappeared. Signs like these, armed and dangerous, are on every freeway here, but so far no one has spotted him. Near blizzard conditions here in Big Bear Lake haven't helped. No eye in the sky, for one thing. In this weather, the helicopters can't fly. On the ground, not much better.
We're going to continue searching until either we discover that he left the mountain or we find him, one of the two.
5 days after Christopher Dorner's burnt-out truck was discovered, Jim and Karen Reynolds stumbled upon him hiding in a cabin. Dorner tied them up before leaving, prompting them to call 911 as he was gone. He stole their car, initiating a police pursuit. Despite his efforts to evade capture, Dorner eventually crashed the stolen vehicle. Subsequently, deputies from the San Bernardino County Sheriff's Department responded to a report of a carjacking of a truck at 12:20 p.m. and initiated a search for the vehicle, both on the ground and from the air. Fortunately, the truck's driver escaped unharmed.
I could tell it was Mr. Dorner. He came out of the snow at me with his rifle pointed at me. I wasn't going very fast, so I stopped, put my truck in park, put my hands up, and he came up and he said, "I don't want to hurt you. Just get out of your truck and start walking and take your dog." And that's what I did. I said, can I get her leash? And he said, "No, just start walking." It was clear from his demeanor that I wasn't one of his targets, and he just needed a vehicle, and I was happy to oblige.
When the truck was spotted, a chase ensued, leading Christopher Dorner to drive to and seek refuge in a cabin. Dorner then opened fire on 2 officers, striking both and tragically killing one, Detective Jeremiah Mekky. Realizing his time was running out, Christopher Dorner barricaded himself inside the cabin, which was soon surrounded by police. Initially, authorities attempted to coax Dorner out using tear gas and loudspeaker announcements demanding his surrender. When he failed to respond, they employed a demolition vehicle to dismantle much of the cabin's structure. Subsequently, pyrotechnic tear gas canisters were launched into the cabin, igniting a fire. Moments later, a single gunshot was heard from inside. The fire burned throughout the night, and the following day, police discovered Dorner's charred remains within the ruins of the cabin.
Before we put that pyrotechnic chemical agent in, we made numerous PA announcements identifying him by name, asking him to surrender, telling him who we were, and asking him to come out. And then the pyrotechnic chemical agent was inserted.
Numerous assault weapons were recovered, as well as numerous semi-automatic handguns, one of which is a sniper rifle, a bolt-action .308 caliber, which is considered a very dangerous and high-powered weapon.
During the autopsy yesterday, the doctor who conducted the process concluded that the cause of death was a single gunshot wound to the head. We are not at this point ready to speak about the manner of death and tell you whether or not that it was as a result of a self-inflicted wound or another round. We will tell you that while we are still compiling the information and putting our reports together, the information that we have right now seems to indicate that the wound that took Christopher Dorner's life was self-inflicted.
Christopher's crusade achieved his desired impact. Numerous Facebook pages emerged, hailing Christopher Dorner as a folk hero for daring to challenge the law enforcement establishment.
LAPD was prosecutor, judge, jury, and executioner yesterday. They burned him alive. Apparently, burning people alive is now considered appropriate behavior for the police. From the very beginning, Dorner had found plenty of sympathizers.
I just want to start off by saying that I perfectly support 100% what Chris Dorner is doing.
I read this manifesto, and I believe him.
On Facebook, more than 18,000 likes for a page titled, "We Stand with Christopher Dorner." On Instagram, the rapper Ab Soul spoke for many when he said this about Dorner's rampage. "This was a necessary evil. God bless you, sir."
People like anti-heroes, and we have a history of rooting for everybody from Bonnie and Clyde and Butch Cassidy.
USC professor Karen North studies the intersection of psychology and social media.
One of the things that social media has allowed us to do is to join conversations and not be as accountable for our opinions.
Christopher portrayed the LAPD as deeply racist, positioning himself as a vigilante uncovering police corruption. However, despite his efforts to cast himself as a hero, he was ultimately a murderer. Regardless of any grievances he may have had, whether legitimate or not, his quest for revenge resulted in the deaths of 4 individuals, including 2 innocent civilians.
It made me realize you are my winning lotto ticket. You're my best friend, you're my girlfriend, and I've had you all this time, so it's about time to cash you in.
I'm worth a million.
You're worth more than $1 million, Billy. So,
what in the world?
Monica, Lisa Kwan.
Yeah, open the box.
Would you marry me?
Yeah.
Christopher Dorner was undeniably a cold-blooded killer. While he may have had legitimate grievances with the LAPD, embarking on a citywide rampage was not the appropriate course of action. As the manhunt unfolded, the LAPD reviewed Dorner's firing and reached the same conclusion. He had fabricated accusations against his training officer, justifying the revocation of his badge. This raises chilling questions about the potential harm Dorner could have inflicted had he retained his position within law enforcement and chose to act out in a similar manner.
Michaela McCollum and Melissa Reed, later known infamously as the Peru Two, found themselves thrust into the global spotlight in 2013 when they were arrested in Peru for attempting to smuggle a staggering 24 pounds of cocaine. What started as a youthful pursuit of adventure quickly spiraled into a devastating ordeal that reshaped their lives, their families' experiences, and eventually the narrative around drug trafficking among young foreigners. Michaela McCollum was raised in a large family in Northern Ireland, with a humble background in a rural area. Her early ambitions revolved around working in the arts, initially studying photography and aspiring to make a career out of modeling. To support herself, she took on various promotion jobs at bars and clubs, which enabled her to immerse herself in Northern Ireland's nightlife. Like many young adults, McCollum was drawn to the promise of freedom and excitement abroad, particularly in the vibrant social scene of Ibiza, Spain. In the summer of 2013, with her family's reluctant support, she left Ireland for the first time, hoping to find work and adventure on the renowned Mediterranean party island. Melissa Reed's background was strikingly different from her future partner in crime. Growing up in a stable, middle-class family in Scotland, Melissa had a good education and supportive parents who encouraged her independence. Much like McCollum, however, she was captivated by the idea of working and socializing in Ibiza. For both young women, Ibiza represented a break from their ordinary lives and a chance to experience independence, make new friends, and earn money, all while enjoying the sun-soaked Mediterranean lifestyle. Upon arriving in Ibiza, Michaela and Melissa quickly realized the challenges of sustaining themselves without a steady job. Michaela's family had been financially supporting her, sending money for basic expenses, but work opportunities were scarce as the summer season progressed. Her mother, who had funded her first week in a hostel, hoped this experience would be a brief summer adventure. But when work was harder to come by than she expected, Michaela stayed with friends she met on the island. The challenges of finding stable income pushed both women further into the late-night party scene, where social connections mattered more than resumes. It was during this time that Michaela was reportedly introduced to a network of people involved in illegal activities, including drug trafficking. While she initially shared the island's allure and excitement with her family back home, the tone of her communications gradually changed. Friends and family back home began to worry, and communications ceased unexpectedly as Michaela's new acquaintances led her down a path that would eventually take her far from Ibiza. At some point during her time in Ibiza, McCollum was reportedly approached with a proposition, a lucrative job involving a brief trip to South America. The details of how she and Melissa Reed met remain unclear, but the two women found themselves bound by similar circumstances and ambitions. A man known in local circles allegedly offered them a significant sum to transport a package from Peru to Europe. Enticed by the promise of financial reward and unaware of the dangers they faced, the women accepted the offer, unaware of the serious consequences that lay ahead. Before they left for Peru, McCollum and Reed traveled from Ibiza to Majorca, where they were reportedly introduced to other members of the drug trafficking network. It was here, on a seemingly innocuous day out at the beach, that they were told the plan. They would act as drug mules, carrying cocaine back to Europe. Under the impression that they had no choice but to comply, they felt trapped and pressured into the task. They claimed they feared retribution if they refused, suggesting that the network was extensive and dangerous. The journey from Majorca to Lima, Peru, was cloaked in tension and uncertainty. McCollum and Reed's arrival in Lima marked the beginning of the end. They spent a few days in the city, staying in hotels and socializing with locals. It was during this time that they were introduced to the specifics of their mission. They were to carry several kilograms of cocaine, hidden in food packages, within their luggage. They packed the drugs themselves, fully aware of the risks, but likely unaware of the severity of the penalties they would face if caught. On August 6, 2013, McCollum and Reed arrived at Jorge Chavez International Airport in Lima, preparing to board a flight back to Europe with nearly 24 pounds of cocaine concealed in their bags. As they approached the departure gate, they likely hoped their ordeal would soon be over. Instead, their journey was about to take an unexpected and devastating turn. Two Peruvian police officers became suspicious of the young, well-dressed women who seemed anxious and out of place. Upon conducting a thorough inspection of their luggage, the officers discovered the packages of cocaine. The arrest was immediate and highly publicized. News cameras captured McCollum and Reed, visibly terrified, as they were taken into custody. The footage of the two women being detained was broadcast on international news networks, with British tabloids seizing upon the story. Dubbed the Peru Two, Michaela and Melissa's ordeal quickly became a topic of fascination and controversy across the UK and Ireland. Initially, both women claimed they were forced into transporting the drugs under duress, telling authorities they had been coerced by an armed gang and threatened with violence. The press followed every development, from their courtroom appearances to statements by their families, who continued to maintain hope for their release. Their story inspired a mixed response from the public. Some saw them as naive victims, while others criticized their apparent recklessness in agreeing to carry out such a dangerous task. The case went to trial quickly, and the Peruvian judicial system, with its stringent anti-drug policies, showed little sympathy for their pleas of coercion. During the proceedings, Michaela and Melissa stuck to their claim of coercion. Despite their assertions, the judge was skeptical, noting inconsistencies in their testimonies and dismissing their story as unlikely. In an attempt to secure a reduced sentence, both women ultimately changed their pleas to guilty, admitting they had agreed to transport the drugs in exchange for a financial reward. The admission of guilt helped secure a lighter sentence of 6 years and 8 months instead of the maximum 15 years they initially faced. Their sentencing brought some closure, but also a sense of despair. Prison life in Peru was harsh, and they faced a new set of challenges as they adjusted to a radically different environment. Both Michaela and Melissa expressed regret and sorrow over the pain they had caused their families, who continued to support them despite the strain of public scrutiny and personal distress. Following their sentencing, Michaela and Melissa were transferred to the Virgen de Fatima prison, a high-security facility notorious for its challenging conditions. Unlike the relatively structured prisons in Europe, the Virgen de Fatima prison was infamous for overcrowding, insufficient food supplies, and a lack of basic amenities. For two young women accustomed to a Western lifestyle, the adjustment was brutal. They faced the physical discomforts of cramped cells and inadequate nutrition, as well as the emotional toll of isolation and regret. Prison life introduced Michaela and Melissa to the harsh realities of their decision. They spent most of their days carrying out menial tasks, including working in the prison's hair salon. The income from this work, along with money sent by their families, allowed them to purchase essentials like water, toiletries, and basic food supplies. This small semblance of independence helped them to cope, though it did little to alleviate the constant stress of incarceration. Both women's families made the long journey to Peru to visit them, offering what support they could. The visits were emotionally charged, providing brief moments of comfort amidst the bleakness of their situation. Michaela's mother, in particular, was a source of resilience, expressing love and support regardless of the circumstances. Michaela and Melissa's story continued to capture media attention, keeping them in the public eye throughout their imprisonment. In 2015, after serving a portion of their sentences, the two women were granted parole due to good behavior. After 2 years in prison, they were released and deported back to the United Kingdom, a turn of events that surprised the public and spurred conversations about rehabilitation and second chances. The media followed their return closely, and while Melissa chose to step away from the limelight, Michaela took a different path. Embracing her newfound freedom, she began to share her story publicly, aiming to spread awareness about the dangers of drug smuggling and the importance of making informed choices. She authored a book detailing her experience, which garnered attention for its honest portrayal of her mistakes, the hardships of prison life, and her journey to self-forgiveness. The The story of Michaela McCollum and Melissa Reed, two young women from seemingly ordinary backgrounds, continues to resonate as a cautionary tale about the dangers of impulsive decisions and the long-reaching consequences of criminal involvement. For many, their experiences underscore the broader societal pressures that young people face, from the allure of quick financial gains to the desire for independence and adventure. In the years since their release, Michaela has become an advocate for awareness and education on the risks associated with drug trafficking, using her platform to speak candidly about her mistakes. Her journey towards self-improvement has inspired a more nuanced public conversation around crime, punishment, and rehabilitation.
In Ecuador, escalating violence fueled by drug cartels disrupts the once tranquil nation, with José Adolfo Maccias Villamar, a notorious figure, extending influence beyond traditional law enforcement, even inciting fear among presidential candidates. Born on September 30, 1979 in Manta, Ecuador, José Adolfo Maccias Villamar, also known as Fito, emerges from a childhood veiled in mystery, his narrative unfolding as one entrenched in poverty and crime, with over 30 transgressions etching his name into Ecuador's criminal history. Affiliated with the notorious Los Choneros cartel, Fito solidifies his status as a dominant figure in Ecuador's underworld, leaving chaos and devastation in his wake, prompting the deployment of 4,000 soldiers to transfer him between prisons, highlighting the unchecked violence gripping Ecuador. Let's delve into it. Originating in the early 1990s in Chon, Manabí Province, Ecuador, Los Choneros derives its name from its birthplace, signifying its deep-rooted ties to the region amid Manabí's emergence as a crucial nexus in the illicit drug trade. Linked to the notorious Sinaloa cartel, Los Choneros operates within a complex network intertwined with Ecuador's criminal syndicates and international counterparts, posing significant challenges for law enforcement efforts. Despite Ecuadorian authorities' attempts to disrupt their dominance through mass prison transfers, Los Choneros expanded their presence, establishing influence within multiple penitentiaries nationwide and spawning new offshoots, complicating efforts to contain their impact within the prison system and exacerbating challenges in Ecuador's fight against organized crime. Fito's narrative unfolds with his 2011 incarceration, bearing 30 charges and a daunting 34-year sentence, yet finding solace within La Roca prison until his bold escape orchestrated on February 11, 2013, alongside 17 fellow Los Choneros members. Exploiting corrupt guards, they breached the supposedly secure facility, though Fito's taste of freedom was short-lived as he was recaptured in May 2013, paradoxically solidifying his status within Los Choneros. In Ecuadorian prisons, gangs wield authority, granting privileges and dictating rules, enabling Fito to navigate corruption adeptly, organizing celebrations, family visits, and accessing contraband. Commissioning intricate paintings and producing a music video within prison walls, Fito showcased his influence and perceived status as a revered figure within the criminal underworld, transcending boundaries even behind bars. Despite facing numerous accusations and charges, Fito's mother, Marisol, adamantly defends his innocence amidst the allegations spanning from drug trafficking to petty theft. Her steadfast support sheds light on the intricate layers of Fito's persona, oscillating between condemnation and admiration within Ecuador's tumultuous legal framework. The tragic demise of Los Choneros leader José Luis Zambrano on December 28, 2020, marks a pivotal moment, catalyzing an irreversible shift in Ecuador's trajectory, triggering a chaotic power struggle among rival cartels and sparking violent clashes nationwide, notably within the prison system, despite efforts to segregate gang factions. Following the death of José, Fito and Junior Roldan rose as trusted lieutenants within Los Choneros. But internal strife emerged when Junior broke away to establish his own cartel, leaving Fito as the sole leader of the faction. Exploiting this vulnerability, rival groups like Los Lobos capitalized on the chaos to seize control of lucrative drug routes previously monopolized by Los Choneros, significantly diminishing their influence in the illicit trade. As Ecuador plunged into ongoing turmoil, the approach of the 2023 election year heightened politicians' awareness of the nation's dire state, with addressing rampant crime emerging as a central agenda item despite its inherent risks. Just 2 weeks prior to the crucial elections on August 9, 2023, presidential hopeful Fernando Villavicencio fell victim to a chilling act of violence, targeted despite being surrounded by vigilant bodyguards and supporters after a campaign event, underscoring the pervasive threat of violence within Ecuador's political landscape. Moments after Villavicencio left the venue, a sudden hail of gunfire erupted, as 18-year-old Colombian assailant Ito fired 12 shots through the car's front window, fatally wounding Villavicencio with 3 gunshot wounds. Despite attempts to flee, Ito was swiftly apprehended by one of Villavicencio's bodyguards, yet bystanders intervened, subjecting him to brutal retaliation before ultimately executing him. While swift justice was meted out to Ito, the mastermind behind the assassination remains elusive, with speculation pointing to potential ties to Fito and Los Choneros, fueled by compelling evidence uncovered by various news sources. In an interview shortly before his tragic death, Villavicencio openly acknowledged the threats posed by Los Choneros, yet remained resolute, declaring, "I'm not afraid of them." His unwavering courage highlighted his steadfast commitment to justice, demonstrating a willingness to confront criminality despite significant personal risk. Following the assassination, law enforcement swiftly apprehended the 18-year-old shooter and 7 other Colombian nationals implicated in the plot. However, a month later, authorities announced the shocking deaths of 6 detainees awaiting due process within Ecuadorian custody, with no official cause disclosed. Just 4 days after the attack on Fernando Villavicencio, Fito was transferred to a high-security facility in Guayaquil, housing up to 150 inmates. President Guillermo Lasso framed the move as a precautionary step for public safety, though it coincided closely with the assault on Villavicencio. The transfer, involving 4,000 heavily armed soldiers, underscored the extraordinary measures taken to ensure Fito's safe relocation between facilities. After a period of apparent calm, hopes that Fito's influence had waned were dashed when, on January 7, 2024, Police General Cesar Zapata made a startling announcement. Fito had vanished from his maximum security prison cell. The circumstances of his disappearance were perplexing. There was no evidence of violence or a clear escape plan. Instead, Fito seemed to have disappeared without a trace, leaving authorities puzzled and the public anxious. The timing of Fito's disappearance, just before his scheduled transfer to another maximum security facility, raised suspicions of possible collusion or insider involvement. With his sudden absence, Ecuador faced the resurgence of one of its most notorious criminals, reigniting uncertainty about the nation's security. The announcement of Fito's disappearance sparked nationwide unrest, plunging Ecuador into renewed turmoil. President Daniel Noboa responded by declaring a national state of emergency, granting authorities extensive powers to suspend civil liberties and deploy military forces, particularly within the volatile prison system, in an attempt to restore order. Despite the imposition of martial law, chaos persisted. Masked assailants brazenly infiltrated a public television channel during a live broadcast, holding employees hostage at gunpoint and seizing control of the airwaves. The motive behind this audacious act, as well as the identities of the perpetrators, remain unknown, leaving Ecuadorians grappling with uncertainty and apprehension in the aftermath of Fito's disappearance. The brazen attack on the television station sent shockwaves throughout Ecuador, revealing that no sanctuary remained immune to cartel violence. This incident heightened the pervasive sense of insecurity among the populace, eroding trust in authorities' ability to protect them from criminal threats. The subsequent assassination of prosecutor Cesar Suarez deepened anxieties, raising suspicions that his pursuit of justice had made him a target. Despite the national state of emergency, outbreaks of violence persisted, showcasing the resilience of criminal networks resistant to traditional law enforcement methods. In a disturbing escalation, inmates seized control of 7 prisons, holding over 158 guards and personnel hostage for days. Distressing videos circulated on social media, intensifying the anguish of families worried for their loved ones' safety. Fito remains elusive, despite promises from Ecuadorian authorities to swiftly bring him to justice. President Noboa's administration grapples with the lack of satisfactory explanations for Fito's inexplicable escape from a maximum security facility, leaving the public disillusioned and filled with uncertainties. Ecuadorians face the daunting reality of battling an increasingly emboldened cartel apparatus, poised to escalate its reign of terror to unprecedented levels.
As twilight enveloped Dubai, the city's skyline shimmered with the last golden rays of the day. Within this vibrant metropolis, Angelo Pandeli's penthouse towered above, a symbol of both luxury and menace. At 53, Pandeli was no ordinary criminal. He was the powerful boss of the Australian Hells Angels. His reputation for ruthlessness and strategic brilliance made him a formidable figure in the world of organised crime. The startling revelation came from Cocaine Inc., an Australian podcast renowned for its in-depth investigations into global criminal networks. Angelo Pandeli had allegedly forged a significant alliance with the Kinahan cartel, a notorious syndicate known for its extensive operations in the cocaine trade. The Kinahan cartel, led by the enigmatic Christopher Kinahan Sr. and his sons Daniel and Christy Jr., had evaded law enforcement efforts across Europe and the Middle East. Their operation was infamous for its sophistication and brutality. The partnership between Pandeli and the Kinahans was not merely a local arrangement, but a strategic move aimed at dominating the global cocaine market. According to Cocaine Inc., the duo was orchestrating an elaborate scheme to transport hundreds of kilos of cocaine from Colombia to Europe via Ireland. This route, fraught with logistical challenges and high risks, was chosen for its potential to maximize profits while minimizing detection. The alliance promised to flood international markets with high-quality cocaine, altering the dynamics of the global drug trade. The partnership's ambition was clear: control every stage of the cocaine supply chain, from production in South America to distribution in Europe and Australia. By leveraging Pandeli's extensive network within the Hells Angels and the Kinahans' established international operations, they aimed to create an unparalleled distribution empire. The podcast's investigative reporting revealed the vast and complex network that Pandeli and the Kinahans had built. Pandeli's role was crucial. His control over the Australian Hells Angels provided him with a powerful distribution network. In Australia, where cocaine prices soared to around €215 per gram, Pandeli's influence was significant, making him an invaluable partner for the Kinahans. The Australian Criminal Intelligence Commission reported a dramatic increase in cocaine supply, with the annual street value of the global cocaine market reaching an unprecedented €110 billion. The collaboration between Pandeli and the Kinahans was a key factor in this surge. Their operation involved not only sophisticated smuggling routes, but also a network of intermediaries and safe houses designed to evade detection. The podcast detailed how Pandeli and the Kinahans employed a variety of methods to move cocaine across borders. Maritime and air freight were used to bypass traditional customs controls, while a network of clandestine routes and contacts ensured the smooth flow of drugs into high-demand markets. The complexity of their operation was matched only by its scale, highlighting the immense profits and risks involved. To secure their operation, Pandeli and the Kinahans used a series of covert meetings and encrypted communications. They built relationships with corrupt officials and utilized advanced technology to monitor law enforcement activities. Their ability to adapt and innovate was a testament to their commitment to maintaining control over the global cocaine market. The partnership between Pandeli and the Kinahan cartel took shape in the luxurious and secretive environment of Dubai. After leaving Australia in 2018, Pandeli settled in Dubai, a city known for its opulent lifestyle and its role as a haven for high-profile criminals. Here, he found common ground with the Kinahans, who had also sought refuge in the city to escape legal troubles and rival gangs. Pandeli and Daniel Kinahan, in particular, became key players in this international drug operation. Their meetings were conducted in the utmost secrecy, often in private luxury venues. These high-stakes discussions were crucial in planning their global cocaine trafficking strategy. The alliance was characterized by a level of sophistication and security that reflected the high value of their illicit enterprise. Pandeli's relocation to Dubai was more than a move. It was a strategic repositioning. Dubai's status as a financial hub provided him with access to international networks and resources that were invaluable for his criminal operations. The city's high level of security and its lax regulatory environment made it an ideal base for orchestrating global drug trafficking. The collaboration between Pandeli and the Kinahans was not without its challenges. Their high-profile status made them prime targets for law enforcement agencies around the world. Despite their efforts to remain under the radar, the magnitude of their operation meant that they were always at risk of exposure. The stakes were enormous, with billions of euros and the stability of global drug markets hanging in the balance. For years, Australian federal police and international agencies had been meticulously tracking Pandeli's activities. The Australian Criminal Intelligence Commission had identified him as a priority organisation target in 2021, a designation given to individuals deemed to pose a significant threat to national security and public safety. Pandeli's extensive criminal history, dating back to 2012, had made him a key focus for law enforcement. His leadership within the Hells Angels and his significant role in Australia's cocaine market were well documented. Reports of his involvement in various criminal activities had led to increased scrutiny from Australian and international authorities. In a dramatic turn of events, Pandeli was detained in Dubai just as he was preparing to travel to Cancun, Mexico, for a major Hells Angels summit. This event, expected to be a high-profile gathering of international motorcycle gang leaders, was crucial for Pandeli's ongoing operations. His arrest not only disrupted his immediate plans, but also sent shockwaves through the criminal underworld, affecting the broader network of associates and operations connected to him. Pandeli's detention marked a significant moment in the fight against organised crime. It represented a substantial victory for law enforcement, but also highlighted the challenges of bringing such high-profile criminals to justice. The subsequent legal battles promised to be complex, involving multiple jurisdictions and significant resources. Pandeli's deportation from Dubai marked a significant moment in the fight against organised crime. His arrival back in Australia was met with extensive media coverage and a substantial police presence. For Australian authorities, this was a long-awaited opportunity to bring one of their most wanted criminals to justice. The legal proceedings against Pandeli were set to be a complex and high-profile affair. Australian law enforcement agencies were prepared to question him about his role in the global cocaine trade, his connections with the Kinahan cartel, and his extensive network of criminal associates. His return was seen as a pivotal moment in the ongoing battle against organised crime. Pandeli's legal team was expected to mount a vigorous defence, challenging the evidence and the charges against him. The case was likely to involve a protracted legal process, with significant implications for both the Australian and international legal systems. The outcome would have a profound impact on the fight against organised crime and the global drug trade. Despite the media frenzy surrounding his arrest and deportation, the legal process for Pandeli was only beginning. The charges he would face and the potential consequences of his actions would play a crucial role in shaping the future of the global cocaine trade and the efforts to dismantle criminal networks. Pandeli's detention and return to Australia had far-reaching implications for the criminal world. The disruption of his operations represented a significant victory for law enforcement, but the global cocaine market remained a volatile and dynamic environment. The Kinahan cartel, despite the setback, was likely to continue its operations, adapting to the loss of a key ally and seeking new ways to maintain their dominance. The case of Angelo Pandeli highlighted the intricate and perilous nature of international crime. His story illustrated the high stakes involved in the global drug trade, the complexities of international criminal networks, and the ongoing efforts of law enforcement to combat organised crime. As the legal proceedings unfolded, the world watched closely, aware that the fight against criminal enterprises was far from over, and that the quest for justice continued in this ever-evolving landscape. Pandeli's arrest and the subsequent legal battles were a testament to the relentless efforts of law enforcement agencies worldwide. The case underscored the challenges of tackling global crime and the importance of international cooperation in addressing the threats posed by sophisticated criminal organizations. As the saga continued, the focus remained on dismantling the vast networks of organized crime and ensuring that justice was served. In the wake of Pandeli's return, Australian authorities and international agencies would continue their efforts to uncover the full extent of his criminal activities and his connections with the Kinahan cartel. The battle against organized crime was far from over, and the global drug trade remained a dangerous and dynamic field. As new alliances formed and old ones faltered, the ongoing pursuit of justice promised to be a key factor in shaping the future of global crime fighting. That's it for today's video. Comment below what you think of this case, and I will see you on the next video.
Mark Buddle, leader of the Comancheros bikie gang, ruled over a vast drug empire and indulged in opulent living. However, a past incident from 2010 resurfaced, compelling him to live a fugitive existence. Ironically, it wasn't his criminal endeavors, but rather a seemingly trivial act by British tourists, specifically slapping his wife's behind, that led to his downfall. This encapsulates the trajectory of Mark Buddle's life. Let's delve into it. Born in Maroubra, Australia in 1984, he encountered adversity early on, leading him towards a criminal path, including juvenile detention. Aligning himself with the infamous Comancheros at 21, known for their involvement in drug trafficking and other illicit activities, he harbored ambitions of rising through the ranks. In March 2009, a pivotal event shook the gang's hierarchy when Mick, then leader, was apprehended for his role in a high-profile altercation at the airport, creating a power vacuum subsequently filled by Duax Dax Nyakuru as the new Supreme Commander. While this transition offered a potential chance for Mark to rise in the gang's ranks, his opportunity had yet to materialize, overshadowed by other pressing matters. In the early hours of Monday, June 7, 2010, 59-year-old Gary Alabon embarked on his cash-in-transit shift, leaving a note for his wife Monica before joining a colleague to refill the Commonwealth Bank ATM with $300,000. Their routine was shattered when armed assailants burst in, demanding they raise their hands, and despite compliance, Gary was fatally shot in the back. The assailants fled with Gary's firearm to a waiting silver Audi S8, leaving Monica to discover the devastating news of her husband's death on television just hours after he departed for work. Despite swift medical attention, Gary succumbed to his injuries shortly after arriving at the Royal Prince Alfred Hospital, marking the tragic end of his 25-year marriage and career just 8 months shy of retirement. The burned-out remains of the Audi were later found near the Comancheros clubhouse, prompting a $100,000 reward for information leading to the assailants. Detective Acting Superintendent Grant Taylor emphasized the malicious nature of the crime, stating Gary Alabon complied with demands and was executed in cold blood. Shortly before 1 a.m. on December 29, 2010, emergency services responded to a distress call reporting a significant blaze engulfing Coogee Inc., a tattoo parlor on Coogee Bay Road. Flames prompted the evacuation of nearly 30 neighboring residents, startled awake by police urging them to leave. Fortunately, firefighters subdued the inferno without casualties, but subsequent investigations revealed the deliberate nature of the attack, implicating the proprietors, Duax, Mark, and an associate, at the center of the assault, highlighting tensions between the Comancheros and their adversaries. The rivalry between the gangs likely initiated in 2008 with an explosion targeting leader Alan Sarkis's vehicle, suspected as a retaliatory strike by the Comancheros. Following escalating hostilities over 2 years, authorities speculated the Coogee Inc. fire might have been a reprisal by the notorious motorcycle club, yet no individuals have faced prosecution. Supreme Commander Duax Dax Nyakuru's departure from Australia to Turkey in 2011 left a leadership vacuum in the Comancheros, which Mark seized to ascend to the position of Supreme Commander, solidifying his authority even within his own family with an unwavering stance. On December 18, 2011, chaos erupted at the Spearmint Rhino Gentlemen's Club on King Street, just 10 minutes before 3 a.m., where Mark and 3 companions were present. Identified by his white attire, Mark engaged in a heated exchange allegedly provoked by derogatory remarks about his mother, leading to a violent confrontation lasting 2 minutes. Mark was later apprehended during a dawn raid by the anti-bikie police unit, Strikeforce Raptor, admitting guilt to charges including affray and assault, awaiting final sentencing while at liberty. However, Mark's tenure as Supreme Commander of the Comancheros was tumultuous, marked by internal strife resulting in tragedies, including the demise of Falau Pisu and a shooting incident involving his cousin John Devine, portraying a situation in disarray. In 2013, the Comancheros established a new chapter in Sydney's southern region, led by Mohammed Hijazi, potentially set to assume the role of Supreme Commander amid Mark's intermittent incarcerations. However, on January 6, 2014, Mark faced arrest once more on the Gold Coast in Queensland, stemming from an outstanding warrant related to the Spearmint Rhino brawl and threats against a Queensland police officer and their family in 2012. Despite appeals, Mark received a sentence of at least 9 months in prison with an additional 6 months of parole, expressing commitment to his children and plans to marry his girlfriend upon release. However, just 5 days after completing his latest parole in July 2015, Mark faced another arrest, embarking on a departure from Australia aboard a chartered Bel Air B-20 King with his girlfriend and daughter, intending for a dream getaway culminating in a surprise marriage proposal on the beaches of Noumea, only to face an unexpected turn upon landing at Newcastle Airport for refueling and passport inspection. Australian Border Force officers intervened, halting the plane and uncovering over $60,000 of undeclared Australian currency stashed in multiple bags aboard the aircraft. Subsequently, police charged Mark with money laundering and failure to report the transportation of $10,000 or more out of Australia, with Mark shifting blame to his girlfriend, raising eyebrows. Mark endured a 2-month stint in jail before securing release once again, while 6 years after Gary Alaban's fatal shooting during the ATM robbery, police disclosed Mark as a person of interest, speculated to prompt his permanent departure from Australia, causing further upheaval within the Comancheros, and sparking a power vacuum and rift among members. In early 2017, a dispute between Ali Bazi, Mark's trusted associate, and another senior Comancheros member named Mezan Chandab escalated tensions within the gang. Mark intervened by issuing a directive to all Comanchero members via text message, asserting his authority and appointing Ali as interim leader until his return. Consequently, Mezan Chandab opted to depart the club, taking 20 members with him, exacerbating the internal discord. The escalating discord and the looming threat of widespread conflict across Sydney prompted proactive measures from law enforcement, including raids on Comanchero members' residences and associates, utilizing legislation related to firearm prohibition orders, empowering police to conduct searches without warrants. Meanwhile, Mark enjoyed the luxurious lifestyle of Dubai, seemingly detached from the turmoil in Australia, but remained actively involved in drug smuggling operations. By 2020, a significant drop in drug prices in Australia significantly impacted Mark's profits from drug smuggling, prompting him to initiate the commission, akin to tactics used by infamous figures like Lucky Luciano, aiming to establish a mafia-style drug cartel capable of influencing street drug prices, comprising several key players within the Australian drug trade. Mark communicated his intentions via text messages to key individuals, proposing the formation of a Sydney Commission in 2021 to address the erratic drug price fluctuations, citing the example of methamphetamine prices. To stabilize prices and ensure safer transactions, he suggested imposing taxes on major players for their drug imports into the country, promising security measures and price stability in return. Around this time, the New South Wales Police reported an increase in drug prices, though it remains unconfirmed if this was a result of Mark's intervention. Business seemed to improve, indicating a period of stability for Mark. However, trouble found him once again after a 5-year stay in Dubai, where an incident involving an English tourist allegedly slapping Mark's wife Mel led to Mark's abrupt departure from Dubai to Turkey, eventually settling in North Cyprus to evade potential prosecution due to the stringent legal system and lack of extradition treaties. Initially perceived as a sanctuary, Mark's situation shifted drastically on July 9, 2022, as he was apprehended on the island and swiftly extradited to Turkey due to being deemed inconvenient for the peace and security of the region. A statement from the Northern Cyprus Interior Ministry detailed Mark's deportation, but Mark and his lawyer countered, alleging political extortion for money, citing persistent demands for bribes to maintain his freedom. Upon his repatriation to Australia in August 2022, Mark faced immediate arrest on charges related to importing 160 kilograms of cocaine into Melbourne in May 2021, along with conspiracy charges. Each offense carries a maximum life imprisonment sentence, signaling a bleak outlook for Mark's future. Meanwhile, the Gary Alabon case remains unresolved, with the reward for information escalating but no prosecutions as of 2024. As always, your feedback is invaluable. Please take a moment to share your thoughts on today's video in the comments section below. Don't forget to hit the like button. It greatly supports the channel. If you haven't already, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss an update. Thank you for watching, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video.